This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a Thursday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. NHL trade freeze being lifted, getting some deals coming in around the league, and lots of news around the National Hockey League coming out of last night's expansion draft and all the big news yesterday that, frankly, thanks to our pal Frank Saravelli, we had to chew on yesterday on a very big show on the channel. Great to see everyone that's with us right now. Thanks to everyone that tuned in yesterday. It was one of our biggest shows ever. And a huge thank you to everyone that has subscribed to the podcast and especially the YouTube channel and helped us hit that milestone yesterday of 5,000 subscribers. Onwards and upwards from here, but can't thank everyone enough for the support of us. And of course, a big part of that is our sponsors, the gang over at Royal Sports, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Not Autocorp, Little Brown Jug Brewing, Breezy Bend Country Club, Assiniboia Downs, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, and our betting partner at Cool Bet Canada. Big show today. We will talk draft after 2 p.m. if you're watching with us live with Michael Farkas from Hockey Prospect. He's kind of the U.S. scout, also does quite a bit on the European side of things. So we'll pick his brain on, maybe some of the non-Canadians, as well as his thoughts on what might be available for the Jets when they make their selection in the first round on Friday night. And we're going to kick around the latest Jets news, the loss of Mason Appleton, the Jet Blue Line, needs going into free agency, the draft, with our guy, Kenny Wiebe, contributor to Sportsnet and one half of Kenny and Rennie. You can follow Ken at Wiebe's World. And if things go as according to plan, Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to be speaking with the local media at 2:30, and we will do our best to try and bring that up and sort of finish the show with hearing what we've got from General Manager Kevin Cheveldayoff. So that's all coming up a little bit later on. Ken Wiebe will join us sort of near to the bottom of the hour. But right now, as I welcome in everybody into the chat right now, great to see everybody here. Oh, I see Destruction's made an appearance. Energy 21, Sean Lishka's here, Sandy and G, Cody, Tracy, the whole gang. Brown Eyed Girl is back. Brown Eyed Girl MJD, a special thanks to her. Been here, I think, almost every show, even with the new job and whatnot. A big part of us getting to 5,000 YouTube subscribers. So it was a great day yesterday, and I think this next couple days and next week as free agency gets going is going to continue to be incredibly interesting, and you're going to want to keep it here, and that's why you make sure you're subscribed. We're going on live, get those notifications, and pop in as we go live every day at 1 p.m. Let's get Michael Remis in here to get things going. Remo, how are you? Man, I'm still sort of buzzing about yesterday getting to 5K, and of course, the incredible numbers we had on the show yesterday is a lot of interest as to what was going to happen with this 32nd team in the National Hockey League. We sort of got the names throughout the day, but I will say it wasn't until I actually saw the show last night, kind of going in and out and seeing the team that they'd put together at the end of it. And you couldn't help but think that Ron Francis decided to go away from a lot of players with salary and term and get young, go cheap, and maintain maximum cap space as they go into the next couple weeks, both for free agency purposes, as well as potentially taking contracts from other teams and getting something for that to build their future.
Yeah, how's it going? Thanks everyone for hopping in and chat. Feeling good here today, and I kind of agree with you that, yesterday, we had heard all the names, but until you saw, the jersey, which I think looks pretty good, the uniform, Seattle as a city, they announced the home opener against Vancouver at their new Climate Pledge Arena, one of the greenest buildings in the world. So I think it's all very exciting. There's now a 32nd team, and you kind of knew all the names. I was kind of watching to see who was there: Marshawn Lynch, Sean Kemp, Lenny Wilkins, Gary Payton. It was all right, the thing. I mean, we knew all the names, so I wasn't like paying so close attention. It was cool to see Brandon Tanev there. He's rocking the hair and asking him about his famous picture.
Well, that was the best part of the entire thing. Like, they pulled Tanev out, and Tanev was awesome. He's like, "What's up, Seattle?" I mean, really embracing, this opportunity to be there on day one and meet the fans as part of the inaugural squad. And they were talking to him, and they've got these massive screens, and they put up something, with Pittsburgh Penguins and a picture of his headshot where he looks like he was being electrocuted or something like that. And you could actually hear an audible laugh from the entire crowd. And credit to Tanev, because like, "Oh, I see you just saw my headshot." I'll say, "I saw a ghost." I'm gonna go with that going forward. One of the more memorable headshots in recent NHL history. But it was cool to see. I memean, Tanev was out there. Jordan Eberle, one of the Flurry brothers. I won't say which one because I'll probably get them mixed up. Mark Giordano, who could very well be the first captain of the Seattle Kraken. So anyways, it was neat. I thought they did a good job. I mean, considering a lot of the suspense was taken out. I mean, if you're a Seattle fan, it was cool to see. I thought the jerseys were awesome. Really, really impressed with their look going forward. The colors are really neat. They've got a great logo, and that trident or whatever anchor thing looks cool. So overall, it was interesting. But I mean, the big takeaway, and we'll get to this with Ken coming up in a few minutes, was just the lack. I mean, who the hell's going to score for this team, especially with Yanni Gourde probably being out for the first couple of months of the season? I will say the defense looks pretty good, especially when you add in those free agent signings of Alexiak and Adam Larson to add to the squad right away. Mark Giordano as well. Although, I'll have to get Steinberg, my partner in Calgary on the Sportsnet shows that I do. I'll have to get him on sometime to talk about that, how they go from there, because, certainly a huge hole for the Flames. We talked about, what would happen if the Jets lost Dylan DeMello, which was a possibility. Losing your captain, a lifetime Flame. And a lot of people expected it was coming in Calgary, but just talking with Pat earlier today, I know a lot of people, still fans, somewhat rattled. And I mean, man, it's a big, big hole for the team going forward. Jets, for their part, lose Mason Appleton, and I think probably a little bit better position to handle the loss of a forward, certainly as opposed to a defenseman. And that certainly has been covered extensively here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Remo, I want to get to some big news on the local things about things going up, but why don't we quickly just break out some of the latest breaking news, because we are hearing about a few trades in the National Hockey League, and I imagine that will continue throughout the afternoon. Ned is off to Detroit. Canes didn't want to play their talented young goaltender who played quite a bit in the playoffs.
Yeah, that we were eagerly awaiting the start of this trade or roster freeze coming open or ending, and first one of the gate, Ned going from Carolina to Detroit for third, and Jonathan Bernier is a pending UFA, and then Ned signing a contract with Detroit to be their goalie. And if you look at his numbers, Alex Nedeljkovic on HockeyDB, he was very good last year, Huss. 920 save percentage, 217 goals against. 932. My bad. That was in the playoffs. He was 920. I mean, he was very good in 23 regular season games and 9 playoff games. He was asking for Frank Cervalli, saying he was asking for $3.5 million, and Carolina didn't want to pay him. Maybe they were concerned about his track record, concerned about the small sample size, concerned that they didn't want to pay him. But I think for Detroit, they get a goalie who seems to be steady, and they're betting on, hey, this small sample size from last year, he can, maybe he's the next great goalie, or, on the flip side, he could end up turning into Andrew Hammond, and he had a great season and, kind of never really followed that up. But I mean, you look at his OHL and AHL numbers, not as good as his NHL numbers. So maybe he, got to the NHL and figured it out, or he's a, 1 year or half season wonder. But that's the gamble for Detroit. I think Yzerman's, proven us very, very smart GM. And you saw what, look at Tampa, what they've done. And, I think Detroit is definitely on their way with him as GM.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, they got a goaltender. I mean, many people speculated that Ottawa and Detroit might be selecting goaltenders in the first round of this draft. I think you can sort of cross off Detroit potentially doing that. I think there's a very good chance that Ottawa, I believe they're sitting at 10. I could see them making a selection on one of those top two goaltenders. I mean, they've picked so many talented young prospects over the last few years that seem to be getting ready to move. And of course, they lost Joey Daccord, who acquitted himself quite well, breaking into the National Hockey League later on last season. He's off to Seattle right now. So as far as goaltending goes, and I guess the big question is, what's Carolina going to do next year as far as their net goes? So I think there's still many more things to transpire. Certainly free agency. One of the free agent goaltenders that potentially could have hit the market was Mike Smith in Edmonton. And Smith has a 2-year deal, which I found quite interesting, Remis. I believe 1.9 in year one, 2.5 in year two. So that comes out to, I believe, $2.3 million a season. For Mike Smith to stay in Edmonton. And at his age, I believe he'll be 40 going into the season. Big win for him to get 2 years, although the AAV, I think, for the Edmonton Oilers certainly makes sense. In all likelihood, they'll probably go with Stalock and Skinner and hope that will be enough, and that will give Ken Holland plenty of cap space to address some other needs, especially as we're hearing almost a done deal that James Neal's going to be bought out, and potentially Mikko Koskinen could get bought out as well.
Yeah, Ken Holland said today they have one buyout. So will it be Koskinen? Will it be Mike Smith? And you look at his numbers, he was pretty good last year in the regular season. .923 save percentage, .231 goals against. I know he's getting up there in age, but it's not a huge cap hit. And 2 years. I think one thing teams are realizing, and Zach Hyman is going to be rumored. Like if a guy's, let's say a guy's injury prone or something, or he's getting older and he gets hurt and can't continue. The team's like, well, we'll just put him on LTIR. It's fine. Not a big deal. No, we won't count against the cap. And, we don't even, we'll pay him like insurance money or whatever it is. So I think teams are realizing, who cares if you add the years? Just say the guy's injured and put him on the injured list and you get relieved of whatever cap issues he may have had. So, maybe it's risky going 2 years on a guy who's 39 years old. Is that correct? Hockey DB? I thought it was 38. I thought it was 38, correct. But Hockey DB says 39. He's going to
be 40. The next birthday, there's 40 candles on it for old Mike Smith.
Yeah, that's a goalie's a position where I think you can go older, but still, committing 2 years to a guy who's 39, good for Mike Smith.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think it would have been a lot more if they just wanted to sign him to a 1-year deal. So in a way, this is maybe the ability to spread it over a couple seasons. And even if he isn't that same guy or carrying the mail next year, I think it allows Ken Holland to do what he's planning on doing this summer. Because, of course, part of that is signing Darnell Nurse. Now they also need to replace Adam Larsson. It's sort of amazing when you think of Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Calgary with the situations on their respective blue lines with free agents and where they were going. The Jets were so worried about losing a defenseman, and a pretty good one in Dylan DeMello. And again, I think we all, at times, maybe overvalue players that, we see on a regular basis as opposed to people in other markets. But I'll tell you what, you take Adam Larsson off the blue line of the Edmonton Oilers and Mark Giordano off the blue line of the Calgary Flames. Those two teams, the Alberta teams, maybe as much as any, got victimized in this draft. And of course, the Seattle Kraken are going to be playing against these teams next year in the Pacific Division, trying to make the playoffs in year number 1, Reeve.
Yeah, and I thought Adam Larsson would have been a nice target for the Jets, but he signed with Seattle. But what's Edmonton going to do now? I see reports from, the insiders that now that, Larsson moved on, they need to fill that spot. They re-engage with Tyson Barrie. But, Tyson Barrie isn't the shutdown, defensive defenseman. Like Adam Larsson. He's an offensive guy who can run the power play, maybe not exactly the most defensively responsible. And I think Edmonton, needs some forward depth, and looks like they're going to be getting that in Zach Hyman. I also see Jujhar Khaira trending. I may have missed that. He's not getting a qualifying offer. That's what Ken Holland said. So he won't be back in Edmonton. I actually thought he was solid in a bottom 6 role. It's funny how Jujhar Khaira trending in Canada.
Hey, Canada,
fourth line,
late July.
Fourth line, third, fourth line forward, not getting a qualifying offer. All of a sudden, he's trending. So we'll have to wait and see what Edmonton looks like. But I don't know. It seems like they're on their defense isn't going to be as good if they don't have Larsson and they got Keith and bring back Barrie. So again, I don't think you can people are saying, oh, Seattle, this team sucks. What's going on? They didn't pick any of the good players. I don't think you can judge anything until it's all said and done heading into opening
listen,
night.
we're not dropping the puck tomorrow in their home opener against the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
There is still a lot of work to be done for Ron Francis. And listen, I mean, I think everyone's ideas and expectations of an expansion team sort of changed with what happened with Las Vegas in their initial year. I think it's crazy to expect that to happen again, even though I will say this, the Pacific Division, relatively weak. I mean, when you look at those California teams right now, obviously you've got the Western Canadian teams, Colorado coming back into the Central Division, big win for them. I mean, I guess it could happen, but certainly there's a lot of work for Ron Francis to do. I mean, I think the blue line's going to be good. You got to hope, certainly. I mean, I'm pulling for Chris Driedger to establish himself as a number one in the National Hockey League. He's had a great story, Manitoba guy, and a couple of other young goaltenders. But let's hold on until we see what happens come next week with free agency, as well as some trades that could very well happen. Yeah. As we've talked about, the one thing Ron Francis has right now, Remis, is cap space, which might be the most valuable asset. And to be honest, considering the way they made their selections, I think it's pretty clear that Ron Francis is thinking exactly that. And that was one of the things that we'd sort of teased on Winnipeg Sports Talk that might make it more likely that Mason Appleton gets selected over Dylan DeMello because, with every one of those selections, those cap savings allow Ron Francis to do many other things. We know Appleton could bring a lot to the club at a salary of less than $1 million, and that's pretty much exactly what happened. I mean, there were some selections that it almost seemed like they were passing on teams. There's no one that we really want. We'll take a young guy. We'll take John Quenneville that is going to be a free agent in a week. It was strange. I think that was what surprised me the most. And I think because we saw those names, everyone just assumed that, wow, these teams must have paid a big, big price to have them not take some more expensive players. Well, that's not the case at all. There were apparently, has been reported, no deals. Unlike Vegas, where they seemingly made a deal with about half the league to not select certain players and got assets for that. NHL GMs, we'd heard the rumors that they'd learned their lessons and they weren't going to do it this time. But I was stunned to hear that just about allegedly every GM in the league just decided, here's my list, take a player, we'll deal with it.
Yeah, here's the cap-friendly list. And one thing we were hearing is, Ron Francis had this crazy high asking price to make some of these side deals and didn't budge, which is kind of weird. And teams are like, no, we're good. And, Kyle Dubas kind of went around that. You can debate if you agree with his protection list or not, but he paid, instead of paying whatever Francis was asking, a high pick, he paid a seventh and, a prospect for McCann to basically protect his whole roster. But here's the list. And they did just make a trade, actually. It did finally become official. We had heard rumblings before. Tyler Pitlick to Calgary, and so that was official. Tyler Pitlick to Calgary from Seattle for a 4th-round pick. So you look at Seattle's picks here, Huss. This is their draft board. They didn't trade any of their picks, which was maybe surprising. They didn't get any picks except for that 4th-round pick now. So we'll wait and see. But here's their cap. I mean, Eberle, he can score. Yanni Gourde, he's not going to be healthy till, you hope November. I thought Donskoy was a no-brainer pick for them, and I like the Kelly Yarncroke pick as well, $2 million. That's pretty solid. But, their commitments beyond, these 2 seasons are not very many. Jamie Alexiak they signed, and Larson they signed. So they have a lot of cap space. We'll have to wait and see what they do with it, but they kind of went with, cheaper guys, and not some of them, not necessarily NHL players. Jake Bean seemed to be the one everyone thought they were taking from Carolina, but they took Morgan Geekie, Manitoban, and who they took this Curtis McDermott from LA. Everyone thought, Blake Lizotte was the popular pick. We'll see. I don't know what else they're going to do. They have all these draft picks. They have cap space. We thought maybe they would be a playoff team, but they didn't take any of the big names. Carey Price, Tarasenko, Gostisbehere, just got given away, and we can get to that. Who else? There were a bunch of other. Max Domi they didn't pick. They took this Gavin Bayreuther, who no one had even heard of. So it's an interesting. I think it was definitely interesting what they did here.
Well, it was, and I think it just goes to show that this is far from being done yet. And there's teams that are going to need to clear cap. Now the trade freeze is off. We could see deals happen going into the draft, and as well going into free agency. And of course, they're going to have more money than any team to spend in free agency. They already grabbed 2 of the free agents that they wanted. And it's an interesting way of doing it. I mean, they could have picked other players from Edmonton and from Dallas and still gone ahead and tried to sign those players to those deals. But it was part of the plan. It seemed like they wanted to get that done. They wanted to introduce the players and have them be, Kraken in the expansion draft right from day one. And, not take on salaries from other players because those were the guys they wanted. So we'll get Ken Wiebe's take on all of this. Just quickly before we move off hockey for a second, Reem, Ghost Bear on his way to Zona. Arizona we had such a good laugh about the Andrew Ladd trade where they got Andrew Ladd, 2 second rounders and a third rounder for nothing. They've done it again and taken on another contract to get picks and, deal with it. And it sounds like Andrew Ladd's planning on playing. They're planning on giving him a chance to play and be on the lineup. And I'm sure Shane Gostisbehere coming out of Philly will certainly be a player that'll be on the ice. And what did they get? A second rounder and a 7th rounder just for taking the Gostisbehere contract?
Here's the trade on Cap Friendly tweeting out to Arizona, a Gostisbehere, a 2nd round and a 7th round from St. Louis to Philadelphia. No return. I'm just waiting for someone on some Islanders fan or Flyers fan to get a jersey with no return on the back. Because I know Islanders fan, although if Vladson was injured last year, I mean, it doesn't really hurt your salary cap, but if he's healthy, and you were telling me that he's going to play in Arizona, I mean, that's a lot of money for a player who hasn't played, who's been injured, and hasn't produced. So
hey, they might need that to get to the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, with where they're at right now, I mean, that's going to be we'll have to get Craig Morgan or someone on maybe when we get out of free agency just to talk about because that franchise, we don't talk a lot about them. I mean, they haven't been very relevant almost ever, but everything that happened with John Chaika, losing their first round pick this year, I think was a huge penalty to a team that, was trying to draft and develop players and, was not one of the big players when it comes to free agency. We heard that they were willing to move off Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who's making $8 a year as their top defenseman. That is going to be one market to watch. That's maybe operating a little differently than many of the others in the league.
They also, before we go on to the other news, they didn't have that first round pick, so they did get a pick here from, who was the picks? They got a bunch of, they're trading for picks here to help, replenish. They got the ones from, Philadelphia next year. They got a bunch, don't have a first round pick this year. They got 3 seconds. Next year they have 4 seconds. That's interesting. And here's their players. It's kind of fun just to browse Cap Friendly. But I guess Andrew Ladd would be, there he is. He's a bird. He's got 4.35 cap hit. That's actually not. I thought it was more than that for some reason. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with Arizona. Interesting what they're doing.
No doubt. And just one other note, speaking of Arizona, Ben Pope from in Chicago mentioned that he was speaking with the Blackhawks scouting director, Mark Kelly, who is previewing the draft. Mark Kelly's quote was, "We know that forfeiture is going in the top 11, which was a great line and a nice dig at the Coyotes. Although I will say this would be a lot funnier if it was coming from anybody other than the director of scouting of the Chicago Blackhawks, because I would be stunned if forfeiture might not end up going in the first round again coming soon, considering what's happening and what probably will have as this investigation continues." So anyways, all that's coming up. Ken Wiebe coming up in just a minute. I do want to mention, Reem, a couple of great news stories on the local sports scene just before we get to that. The Goldeyes announced today that the Fish are coming back to Winnipeg. Home opener is August 3rd. And it sounds like everything has been signed, sealed, and delivered, signed off. The Goldeyes, players, coaches, everyone's going to be fully vaccinated. Visiting teams coming in will be fully vaccinated. If guys aren't fully vaccinated, they won't be crossing the border. And, for all the teams, they probably will have to leave a few guys back. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Goldeyes might have to, change their roster a little bit, considering that if there are players that don't want to get vaccinated. So, listen, for baseball fans here, we've been missing the Fish. It's just phenomenal because the schedule has rarely been friendly to at least fans here. And I'm not sure whether they were hoping this would happen, and this is the reason why it was set up. But I believe starting on the August 3rd, over the month, 20 regular season home games at Shaw Park. So You can find out more at goldice.com. Steve Schuster's done a full media release on that. And if you're a Gold Ice ticket holder, you're probably getting a call today or tomorrow letting you know how this is going to work and getting you set up. But baseball season will happen here in Manitoba. And the other great news is that Assiniboia Downs is going to be opening up to fans. 50% fans have to be fully vaccinated, much like the Gold Eyes and the Bombers. They'll be opening up the main floor, the outdoor area, to fully vaccinated fans up to 50% capacity. And that is going the next night of live racing. Come Monday, July 26th, it will be open. And probably into August at some point. We'll plan to do something at the ballpark with Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners, and we'll certainly do something out at Assiniboia Downs. Just before we get to Ken Wiebe, we do want to thank our friends at Royal Sports. Hockey season is here, which is crazy to think about. The time off of the ice for so many has led to some incredible anticipation for the upcoming season. And with the health restrictions loosening, I imagine there'll be a lot of people getting on the ice. That also means you might need some new gear. Maybe the skates don't fit as well as they did before. Royal Sports, your number one stop for all things hockey. And if you do have a hockey player or someone in the family that's looking for a gig, a new job, I do know Royal Sports is hiring right now. If you want to go to their Royal Sports Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina, you can see it right there on the screen. They are hiring. You can find out more. Certainly, I've known a ton of people over the course of the last 20, 25 years that have worked for the Hasbeeks over at Royal. Really, really fun place to do it. And needless to say, you're working in the coolest store, talking sports and working sports. It's a great spot if you're involved in the sports. So check it out, Royal Sports. And of course, while you're there, bikes, camping gear, expanded fitness section, the best selection of licensed merchandise from the main leagues, anywhere you'll find. It's all there at Royal Sports, 650 Rally K, 750 Pembina Highway. And we are waiting the Winnipeg Sports Talk hats we did with our friends at Royal Sports and New Era. And we'll hopefully have those available coming up in the next couple of weeks. Of course, it's blizzard season. Well, it's always blizzard season, but especially with this beautiful weather. Pop down and grab one at one of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQ locations in Winnipeg, DQ Northgate, DQ out in Niverville, the DQ at Polo Park, and the DQ at St. Anne's. And if you're either hosting or attending a gathering, as it were, well, why don't you hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba, order a cake in advance, pop by and pick it up and be the hero of the gathering. And a big shout out to our friends at Boston Pizza. With the new rules, we'll be able to, get out for watch Bomber games, Blue Jays games, and of course, coming up with the hockey season, Jets games back in the BP Lounge. But right now, it's the patio, which really is the place to be. And they've got the new summer menu, including the honey dill fried chicken sandwich, the burger Italiano, and on the patio, the great new cocktails for summer, the Bulldog Margarita Fish Bowl, the White Sangria Smash, the Peachy Mojito Royale, and the Galaxy Fish Bowl. Pop by your local Boston Pizza tonight. Tell them your boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. All right. It has been, we've been working overtime trying to find an availability for our good friend Ken Wiebe, who's been, smoking drives, dropping putts, touring the province. But it's a big time right now, and Ken has kindly made some time for his friends at Winnipeg Sports Talk after an epic Winnipeg media challenge at Falcon Lake earlier this week. But lots going on. Kenny's back on the grind, and he's back on WST. What's going on, boss? How are you?
Very good, Huss. Welcome back from Aikens. Glad you had a good fishing trip. Yes, the golf tour has been going well, but nice to be immersed in some hockey coverage for this week and change. And some interesting developments today, Huss, as you know.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And just quickly on that, what did you shoot at Falcon? I heard Billick went 43 on the back nine and dropped a 92. Very impressed with his score.
Yeah, he had a solid round. I was fortunate enough to beat him by one on the back. It was only an 87, but I had 5 or 6 3 putts. The ball striking very good, Huss, but I have to admit I need a flat stick lesson. Yeah, Derek Goodwin is probably going to be getting a call here in the next week or so. It's been rough. I've been in the 40s with my putts lately, so we got to get that cleaned up.
Ken, I've been telling you this for years. Don't worry about the putting coach. You need a mental coach. It's all between the ears, Ken. That's all between the ears. Hey, listen, let's get to it. We'll get to Seattle in a minute. Sure. What do you make of what we've seen today? Ned going to the Detroit Red Wings, Mike Smith signing a 2-year deal, and the Coyotes pulling off another deal for no return. I just love it.
Very interesting. The big news for me is Nedeljkovic. So obviously, we know that Carolina is a team that sets a certain value on its players, and if you don't agree to that value, you can search elsewhere for an opportunity. So, rolling the dice a little bit, but I would expect them to be in the market for a number one goaltender here coming up. Jonathan Bernier is a very stable backup, but I would expect them to be in the market. And man, maybe that gets them into the Vegas Golden Knights vicinity, Huss. For me, immediately, I think maybe that's a potential landing spot for Marc-Andre Fleury. We know that Fleury has said he'd like to finish his career in Vegas, but I have a hard time believing that. Sure, it's possible that they can return with both goaltenders, but I think that this is the summer that either Fleury or Robin Lehner are moved. And I mean, Lehner just signed a new deal last year, so I have a hard time believing that Lehner will be out the door, but we know Kelly McCrimmon and company are not afraid to make decisions, tough decisions, if you will. And I really like the additions that they made in Nolan Patrick this week. I mean, I really like it's a smart pickup. I know there's been some injury history and obviously too, Brett Howden. I think that's a really smart pickup. I mean, Vegas is a team that values its third and fourth lines, and I think that Howden will fit in really well there. And Patrick is a great bounce back candidate as long as he can stay healthy. Nobody knows him better than Kelly McCrimmon. And I think eventually once he gets back up to full speed, he could be a guy that really flourishes, whether that's with Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty or somewhere else in the lineup.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, talking to a friend that's associated with it, I mean, I think it's safe to say that, Kelly McCrimmon had his eyes on Nolan Patrick for a long, long time. And, it's interesting. I mean, it's such a weird thing, and especially for, you that's covered hockey in this market for so long, to see essentially a 1-for-1 trade in the National Hockey League with two young top 5 picks, both from Winnipeg. We'll probably be waiting for that for a long time, but it sort of speaks to some struggles Cody Glass had at cracking that lineup. And you look at what happened with Nick Suzuki. They held on to Glass, didn't want to trade Glass, and gave up Suzuki in that Max Pacioretty trade. It might be different if they redid it. But for Nolan Patrick, I mean, injury issues and whatnot, I'm looking for somewhat of a fresh start. But that Kelly McCrimmon's thinking about the high-end potential of Nolan Patrick, and I'd imagine that if he can stay healthy, he'll get every opportunity to really turbocharge his career in the desert.
Yeah, he really will. And obviously we know the injury issues are well documented, but Huss, I covered the Western Hockey League final that year, and man, he was just an absolute dominant force for me. And Kelly knows the potential. He knows the ability. This is a guy that can really shoot the puck. He's a very cerebral player, and he's a very good playmaker. So we know that, Vegas has had some trouble scoring goals when it comes to the later rounds, but he's a guy that can really help on both those fronts, really good shooter and a really good setup man. So, and there's also no pressure for him to immediately be a number one, centerman. I mean, they have Chandler Stevenson there, but I think eventually Patrick could be a really good fit and really good player there. And I think he's going to do a great job. And I think it'll put him in a really good space. We know the Philadelphia market can be difficult on its players. It can, spit you out and chew you up, if you will. But I think that Nolan Patrick is going to an excellent situation. And I think he's going to absolutely flourish with this opportunity.
Ken Wiebe with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Kenny, let's focus on the Jets. We spent a lot of time the last couple of months talking about who would be protected and who would be lost. And I think it's safe to say, many of our conversations at the development of Logan Stanley were on the money, that he was the guy that was selected, because I think many people believe that he would have been picked, even if he doesn't fit in right into the plans immediately. The potential of a player like Stanley would be too much for a guy like Ron Francis to move. A lot of people were very concerned that Dylan DeMello would go, and I would imagine Cheveldayoff was one of those players, one of those people as well. You don't like to lose Mason Appleton, but given the fact that you were losing a player, I think everyone would agree that the Jets have far more ability to lose someone from the forward core than the defense core. Would you say this worked out, with all due respect to Appleton, who was great for the Winnipeg Jets and had a real solid season? It worked out about as well as could have been expected, considering they didn't have to give up anything to have them select Appleton. And, the defense core is still intact, although still needing some additions for next year.
Yeah, Huss, I mean, first and foremost, shout out to you for having that for quite some time in terms of the development discussions and the debates. And some folks were not in agreement, and some folks didn't like your suggestion, but you had it bang on from the beginning. Best case scenario is the best way to describe it, Huss, and that is not a knock on Mason Appleton. People who have been following your show and following my work know that I picked Appleton to be the breakout player or surprise candidate for this year, and he absolutely was that player with 12 goals and 25 points. He's really developed well into a middle six forward after being a 6th round draft pick out of the USHL. Really hardworking guy. We know that, he probably hasn't hit his ceiling yet. He's going to be a consistent double-digit goal scorer. He's got great speed, probably one of the best at getting to the back post on the Winnipeg Jets and getting, either rebound goals or banging in backdoor tap-ins. Really smart penalty killer when used in that role and can give you some help on the second power play if you need him to do so. I think it's a great opportunity for him. And I think right out of the gate, Seattle knows what Tampa Bay was able to have success with. For me, I think you immediately put Brandon Tanev and Mason Appleton on a line together, and you have 2/3 of a really good third line. And if it's possible, I mean, those guys could potentially move up if you need them to, but that's a really good third line with the potential to move up if you had to. In terms of the Jets, not losing DeMello is absolutely massive. I know that this point of contention has been hotly contested, but not having to replace 2 top 4 defensemen is an absolute. It's a win for the Jets. There's no doubt about that. If they had lost DeMello, their job would have got exponentially more difficult. It was a calculated risk for sure, Huss. I think there probably would have been some anxious moments, but we know that Kevin Cheveldayoff and company would have done their due diligence, and it worked out for them. I mean, some people are saying, well, you shouldn't give the Jets credit because it worked out for them. 2 things can be simultaneously true. It can be a calculated risk, but it could also be the right decision at the same time. And for the Jets, in this case, it certainly was that. So the bigger thing, Huss, is that now they have to fill that other spot, right? So as great as the news was for the Winnipeg Jets yesterday, 2 of their potential targets are also off the board, and Adam Larson and Jamie Alexiak, who we know the Jets were definitely in on Alexiak at the trade deadline. He would have received an offer very similar to what he got from Seattle. Would they have been comfortable with 5 years? We don't know that currently, but we know that that's what it was going to take to win the bid. So the job will become still difficult. But, I mean, the job is obviously easier when you only have to replace one of those guys instead of 2. So I would say the Jets are in a pretty good spot, and, this was a potential road with navigating with potential to have many potholes to elude. And I would say that the Jets were able to elude the majority of those potholes. But now it's all about making sure the road is completely smoothed over, if you will, when it comes to building that defense core. Because I don't know about you, Huss, but I've been looking at that UFA list, and beyond Dougie Hamilton, I don't see a lot of really great options when it comes to the UFA candidates on the right side. So to me, that means you either got to move one of your guys onto the right side, or you have to make a trade. And I think that we're seeing some trades come and start happening. But right now, Huss, I don't know about you, but for me, I think the best chance for the Jets to fill that void is in a trade, unless they're able to, swing for the fences and get a Dougie Hamilton.
Does Brandon Montour fit in with the Jets if he was there? He's sort of that next tier of guys that is established and would probably fit a need. I guess the question is that good enough? And is there a better option on the trade market? And as far as the trade market goes, we'll get to free agency next week. What intrigues you about the Jets situation going into tomorrow night and the first round? If we're talking about a potential trade, does it happen this weekend, or is that something that maybe need to see how things shake out going into free agency and then make a move?
Yeah, 2 big things at play there, Huss. I think the fact that the Jets only have the 4 picks, I would think that I'd be pretty comfortable suggesting that they're probably going to make that pick at 18/17 as after the forfeiture, as you earlier mentioned. It will be the 18th overall pick in the annals of history, but it will be the 17th player chosen. Some intriguing candidates at a lot of variety of positions they wrote about today, including Winnipegger Carson Lambos. And sure, folks are going to say, well, the Jets have a quote unquote stacked left side already, and their prospects are, tilted to that left side. But to me, Carson Lambos is an NHL prospect in 2 or 3, 4 years down the road. So I don't think that you don't take him because he's a left-handed shooting defenseman if you see that high-end ceiling that he was displaying 2 years ago when he was a full-time player and had such a great year. So to me, I expect the Jets to make that pick, but I also expect a lot of other things to be in play. And the other factor, Huss, we know, and we'll dive right into it, is the status of Andrew Kopp's situation. We know we expect negotiations are already ongoing. Some folks saw Saturday as a bit of a deadline, but to me, that was an artificial deadline. Andrew Kopp was always going to be protected by the Winnipeg Jets. I think that there are two sides that want to make a deal here, but at some point, there's going to come a time, the moment of truth, if you will. And some of the developments in the recent history and memory will play a role. I mean, we know Zach Hyman, if his numbers coming in at just over 5 or right around 5, now Ryan Nugent-Hopkins coming in around 5, we know that Andrew Kopp's camp probably wanted somewhere in the vicinity of $5 million, depending on the term. So we've always talked before that, the Jets would probably like that number to be closer to Alex Iafallo and the LA Kings, and that's around 4. So is there middle ground that's found, or where do they get to? But what we do know is that we don't expect this to reach the arbitration stage. We know that the player-elected arbitration is an option for Andrew Kopp, but if that happens, we expect a deal to be made in terms of a trade before that ruling comes down, because the Jets aren't going to let Andrew Kopp play his last year and walk for nothing. So I do think there's still, I don't know if there's momentum in the negotiations or not. I would expect, we know that Andrew Kopp wants to be part of this team, and we know the Jets want him to be part of it. We know he's part of the core group. He's part of the leadership group. And now it's all about finding a number and term that both sides are comfortable with. So having said all that, obviously we know the top priority for the Jets is adding another defenseman. Neil Pionk could move into that top role with Adam or with Josh Morrissey. Maybe you look for a second pairing guy, but I am more likely thinking that it's going to be Logan Stanley playing with Neil Pionk, and then you're going to find a partner for Josh Morrissey, and then you probably have Heinola with DeMello in that mentorship role, but that you can also play DeMello in that top pairing role as well. So it's all about, we know it's a big supply and demand. We know there's a lot of teams looking to upgrade their defense core. So are you going to take a big swing, or do you have to make a trade? I mean, those are the big questions that the Jets are faced with right now. But in terms of their lineup, they have some young forwards that we know need work. We know need to be getting full-time work, including David Gustafsson, who's the Manitoba Moose MVP. To me, I have him on that fourth line center role. If you wanted to move him to the wing, could you fill him into that spot vacated by Mason Appleton? Sure. Jansen Harkins is a guy who's looking for a bounce-back season. We know Christian Vesalainen moved his way up the depth chart this year. So there are a lot of pieces at the forward position where the Jets are, in pretty good shape, but I wouldn't rule out them looking there too. And we all know the other development, broken by Darren Dreger today as it pertains to Cole Perfetti. This is a big deal, Hassan.
Yeah,
I mean, if
exactly.
this rule change is made...
I wanted to get to this with you. I mean, just for folks, if they have missed this, we were I was saving it for you, but we spent a lot of time yesterday talking about the Perfetti situation. And, as it stands right now, as a 19-year-old drafted out of the Canadian Hockey League, you're either making the National Hockey League team or you're going back to junior. And, it's been well documented what he did at the AHL level, playing at the World Championships. It doesn't seem like there's much to be gained by Cole Perfetti. And I guess what Dregs, broke earlier today is that, what is being thrown out there, that players that played 20 games in the American League last year, of which Perfetti is one of, would have the opportunity to play in the American Hockey League. And if that is approved, that is big for, I'd say, the Jets and Cole Perfetti, that he could play professional hockey. And I still think he may very well get an opportunity to play with the Jets. But if that isn't the case, playing in the American Hockey League did him a lot of good last year, and I'm sure would do very as well this year. What are you hearing on that, Ken? And just your thoughts on what that maybe does to, the conversations around Perfetti and where he would end up next season if that wasn't an option?
Yeah, so it's a massive development, both for the player and for the Jets organization. Obviously, we know that there have been circumstances in the past where, that we would have loved to have been able to send Mark Scheifele to the minors rather than send him back to Barrie the second time, I think. And no offense to his development at Barrie and with the World Juniors and everything else, but he was ready for that next challenge. And based on how Perfetti was able to use his spatial awareness and his hockey IQ and hockey sense to be such a consistent performer at the American Hockey League level. For him, he needs to be challenged. So being challenged, and that's not a knock on the Ontario Hockey League, which is a great league, but unless he's going back to a Memorial Cup contender, for him, the next step is to steal an NHL job or to be playing in the American Hockey League and furthering his development. And the biggest thing with that, Huss, that we know is I think that he's going to get his chance. He's going to get a run to show that he's an NHL player. But if he's not quite there yet, then the ability to send him to the Manitoba Moose and to have him one phone call away and be able to have him called up rather than sending him back to junior and then saying, well, when your junior season's over, you either join the Moose or you hopefully get yourself into a Cole Caulfield situation. Well, now they wouldn't have to worry about that. Now you have him with the Manitoba Moose, or you have him with the Winnipeg Jets if he wins the job. And we know that this is a guy who came a long way in 1 year at a time where many of his peers didn't even get to play hockey last year. So Perfetti used that year of development so wisely. He's such a smart player. We know that he is valued for all the tools that he brings. This summer, it's all about a great summer of training and everything else. Great for him to be able to go to the World Junior Camp. But this is his first NHL camp, so he's going to have to go out and win a job. And I think that he will be prepared to make the decision as difficult as humanly possible for Paul Maurice and Kevin Cheveldayoff and company.
Ken Wiebe joining us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. One of the other things that's being mentioned, I guess somewhat in relation to Perfetti, but also, another story with the Winnipeg Jets is Paul Stastny's status. You heard anything about conversations with Stastny from the Winnipeg Jets? And I guess I won't put you on the spot saying what will happen. What do you expect? But is Paul Stastny still a possibility for next year? And if he does or doesn't sign, what does that mean for the Winnipeg Jets?
Yeah, I would think that it's still a possibility for the Jets, of course, Huss, but it would have to be at a discount from his salary from last year. And what that number is, we don't know. There's going to be genuine interest in Paul Stastny's status. I don't think we're looking at a Joe Thornton league minimum situation for him, but I do think you'll have to take a significant haircut from the 6.5 that he made last year. To me, it's going to be all about fit. Paul Stastny's a guy who wants to win. He's knocked on the door several times in his career before. He's a guy that's going to make sense on a lot of levels. I think about who the Tampa Bay Lightning could lose, and I think that Paul Stastny would be a great fit there. Some people say, well, he's not the fleetest of foot, but he's the type of smart, intelligent player that really could flourish with a team like Tampa Bay. I think the Colorado Avalanche are going to be a team that are interested in adding some more center depth, and an experienced guy like Paul Stastny, who's been to the conference final several occasions. I think the Minnesota Wild could be kicking the tires on Paul Stastny, but ultimately I think the Jets would be interested, Huss, but it's all about the number. Is that number 3 million? Is that number 2 million? I don't know that at this point, and we won't know. This is the one time where not having the interview period window kind of hurts the situation, I think. But I would think that the Jets are certainly interested. We know he's been a great mentor for Pierre-Luc Dubois. We know he has great relationships with guys like Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Andrew Kopp, and guys like that. And I think he's still a very capable player. So he will be valued in the open market, but it'll be on a short-term deal. And I think the only thing that maybe works against the Jets in the situation was nothing they did. It was the pandemic. I think it would have been a tough scenario for Paul and his family in Winnipeg last year with just not having that ability to have those same interactions that you would normally have. But this is a guy who loves the game. His pursuit of the Stanley Cup final, he wants to win it. He wants to be on that trophy, Huss. So that's what drives him to play. I think he's still a very capable player. We've seen that. He's so smart. He can help a team's power play. And I do think that he's not going to have trouble finding work. Where that work is going to lead him still would be a bit of a mystery right now. But I do think the Jets are interested in bringing him back at the right price, if you will.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that it's probably more likely that he comes back, or at least that they make a significant push to get him, just because of what we saw from Pierre-Luc Dubois last year. And, it's not a knock on Dubois. I think they still believe in him, but it didn't really work out in that first season. And, if it doesn't going forward and you don't have Paul Stastny, you've got a pretty significant issue there in the top 6 of the forwards. But again, that's why so many people will bring up Perfetti. I'm not here saying that he's ready to just pop in and be a top 6 center right now in the National Hockey League, but it is quite intriguing because as much as we spend a lot of time obsessing over what's happening with the Jet Blue line, there are also some questions about the forward group. And that was even before Mason Appleton got picked, because I think a lot of people thought that they would get victimized on that blue line of either Stanley or DeMello.
Yeah, for sure, Huss. I mean, Paul Stastny is the ultimate insurance policy for all of the things that you mentioned. He's a great mentor for Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's a great safety valve if you need him to move back to center. And he'd be a great guy for Cole Perfetti to learn from as well, right? I mean, this is a guy, Cole Perfetti is a sponge. He loves the game. He soaks up everything about it. He loves talking about it. Paul Stastny is a great veteran. The beauty of Stastny, Huss, is that if you wanted to play Paul Stastny on the third line with Adam Lowry, you know he can do the job. He did it last year briefly. You could play those guys together. I mean, Stastny's comfortable on the right side, depending on what happens with Andrew Kopp. I think there's a lot to be said and a lot to be made for Paul Stastny returning. But it all comes down to dollars and cents. And, you know, who else is coming back? I mean, the one thing we saw, Huss, from the teams that made it to the Final Four, they all had a very capable fourth line. And as I mentioned earlier, David Gustafsson has to play this year. He's ready to play on your penalty kill if you're the Winnipeg Jets. He's ready for a bigger role. Christian Vesalainen showed at times he's ready for a bigger role. Those guys had chemistry together with the Moose. Do you play them together? You could. Vesalainen might be with Lowry. Like, let's see how these things play out. But I think that there could be in the market. One of the things we know, Huss, after Scheifele went out of the series with the suspension, Jets didn't score. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe in the mix for some of these guys. I mean, one thing that I thought with Ottawa, talking about Evgeny Dadonov, I mean, here's a guy that is going to be available. He is a consistent 20-ish kind of goal scorer. He has a big frame. He doesn't really play a physical game, but he's a guy that can play either wing, and for a team that doesn't have a lot of right wing depth, to me, he's a guy that could make some sense depending on the price tag. But that's one of the guys that I would be on the lookout for on the trade market. We know Ottawa's got a lot of young forwards they want to insert into the lineup. Maybe that could be a way that the Jets go if they're looking to add offense in a bit of a bigger frame.
All right, one more Jet question before we get back to the Kraken and everything else in the league. If the Jets are going to address the defense, and assumably the right side of the defense for this year, do you think they're looking for a player with term, or is it a player on a 1-year or a 2-year deal? And are there any names that come to mind that you think Chevy might be kicking tires on?
Sure. I mean, we know the name in the news right now is Rasmus Ristolainen. We know the Jets have been linked to him in the past. They've been interested in his services. We know that the underlying numbers don't paint a pretty picture for the Buffalo Sabres defenseman. But one thing I would say...
Was there good for anybody on the Buffalo Sabres last year?
No, exactly. I would say this is how I would describe it and how I've said it to people before. I mean, Ristolainen is in a situation that was similar to where Tyler Myers was at when he joined the Winnipeg Jets. He had been through a long stretch of losing where things had been very challenging. I think he would really benefit from a fresh start, if you will. Obviously, we know that his analytics and his analytic numbers are not good, but he's the kind of guy that has some of the elements the Jets are lacking on the back end and things that they are looking for in terms of size and physical play. And he's pretty mobile for a big guy. He's got a big shot. Yes, I understand a lot of his points come on the power play, but you're not bringing in Ristolainen to be a Dougie Hamilton. You're bringing him in to play a shutdown role with a Josh Morrissey. So all about the price for me. I mean, the one thing with Ristolainen is he only has 1 year left of term. I think it's around $5.5 million. So, I mean, are you willing to go Dylan Samberg and a pick or a prospect? I mean, that's a steep price to pay.
No.
Exactly. So for me, the bigger one has, what are the Nashville Predators doing, right? Are they rebuilding, or are they spinning their tires, or what's David Poile going to do next? They protected 5 defensemen. If the Nashville Predators are going to go on any sort of rebuild, and if Ekholm is available, the Jets absolutely have to put together the best package possible. Of course, it would have been better to get Ekholm for last year at the deadline to get 2 runs at it, but we know that fell through because the price tag was too high and Nashville felt that they were still in it. To me, if Nashville is rebuilding after moving out Ryan Ellis, that is the prime target for me. If I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff, I think it's very interesting to see what Nashville does. I don't know if he's available, but if he is, then I think you're looking at reassessing what the best offer that you can make is. But of course, they want to have a long-range solution, Huss. So a guy on a 1-year term like a Ristolainen or Ekholm, it's a little bit... It would provide immediate relief, but I think the Jets are looking for more long-range relief. But at the same time, maybe they want to make an offer that they could extend one of those players if they were in the bidding. But I think it's a fascinating time coming up for the Jets. I think the roster is going to look a little bit different by the time we get to July 29th. How that looks and where those changes come, I mean, that's the beauty of what we do. We're going to follow it as close as we can. And right now, the crystal ball looks a little bit cloudy, but I think a lot of things are going to be coming into focus over this next 8-day period here.
All right, Kenny Wiebe with us talking Jets and everything happening around the National Hockey League. Oh, one more just on the Jets. Matthew Perreault. Do you think they'll be talking with Perreault about potentially coming back at a obviously less than he was making last year? Or is that one of those spots that will be opened up to a younger player or potentially a newcomer?
Yeah, I think the Jets value Matthew Perreault and what he has done. If I had to bet on the cool bet train, Huss, I would bet that Matthew Perreault is moving on to another opportunity. But on a 1-year deal for $1 million or $1.5 million, I mean, I would certainly consider bringing him back if I was Kevin Cheveldayoff. But they also have some young forwards that they want to be getting into full-time duty. So I'm not expecting Matthew Perreault to come back, but I think the door is definitely open that for both sides to consider a reunion. But at this stage, I would say it's unlikely that he will return unless, depending on how the market shakes out. But I'm not expecting Matthew Perreault to be back. He was one of the smart free agent additions for the Winnipeg Jets when he was not qualified by the Anaheim Ducks. I think that was one of the shrewdest moves that the Jets made, that first deal. I think, 3 years at $3 million a shot. I mean, obviously Perreault did enough to earn a big, significant raise to 4.125 or whatever it was. And here's a guy who plays his behind off. Huss, we know that. He's a guy who can give you minutes up and down your lineup. He helps the power play. He's a real good team player and gives you everything that he has. So that type of player would be welcome back on any hockey team. But right now, I would guess that he's looking for another opportunity. And to me, I think that he'd be a guy that would be great. I mentioned Tampa earlier. I mean, Tampa's going to be needing those Pat Maroon type contract guys. I think that Matthew Perreault would be an incredibly great addition. And when you're going for a three-peat, Huss, you're always looking for guys that are hungry. I think Matthew Perreault would be an excellent addition around that $1 million mark for a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning.
All right, Ken, now one other question of a player that we have not brought up. You can see this right here. Our guy, Sami Niku. I'm an owner of this Upper Deck clear-cut rookie card. What are the chances Niku is a Winnipeg Jet next week?
That's I'm not going to go 0, but I'm going to go a number probably closer 10%.
Like, is he a player that they might move at the because the one thing about Niku is that I think there'd be some interest, and you already mentioned the Jets only have 4 picks in this draft.
Yeah.
Now, I had speculated that depending on the way their draft board looks, and I think that we're going to talk to Michael Farkas a little later on from Hockey Prospect on this, and Scott Wheeler tomorrow. I expect these draft lists to be incredibly different from team to team, and they often are anyways. But then when you add in the scouting challenges this year, like if the Jets get to 18 and they have, 3 or 4 guys that they still feel are first round value, and they can pick up a second rounder by moving back, 8 or 9 spots or something like that. First of all, I think that might be in the mix. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they have decided that Sammy, is too far down on the pecking order. They've got other young defensemen that they want to get in ahead of him. Might they trade him now and, in before the draft to potentially add a little bit more draft capital, if you will, to stockpile, having only 4 going into this weekend?
Yeah, for sure. I would expect Niku to be involved in some discussions. I just don't know what the value is. Obviously, the Jets would still like to get significant, decent value, but I think it's probably, right now, if we're guessing, it had to be somewhere in a later round pick for Niku's services, but he'd be a guy that would have a lot of appeal. What do we know? A lot of owners lost a lot of money last year, and a lot of teams are looking for salary cap space, including the Seattle Kraken. So if you have a player that is at, I think, 775 or whatever, I think that's what it is for this year, and then you would have team control after that. I think that Niku would be viewed as a potential bounce back candidate also, just because of the mobility and because he has that AHL strong season where he was the Eddie Shore winner as defenseman of the year. But I don't think a lot of teams would be giving a lot up for him. I do think that it's probably best for both sides to, start a fresh relationship elsewhere. It's probably time to cut the cord. Nico wasn't even practicing with the Jets last year at the end of the year. So I think he's ready for a fresh start, and I think that he will be moved. I don't know if it's before the draft. I would expect it to be before the draft, but I'm not 100% sure on what the asking price or the going rate is to acquire Sam Niku. But I don't expect him to be back with the Winnipeg Jets, no matter what's happening on the back end. I think that both sides are probably going to head towards a divorce, if you will. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to add a later round pick for Sam Niku, or maybe he's part of a bigger package, on something like an Ekholm or a Ristolainen, where one of those teams would be looking for Niku as a value-added kind of proposition, if you will, leading into the season or into the draft. But I think we're in for a few frantic days of activity. Certainly watching what's going to be happening with Seth Jones. We know about the moves around the division. We know, Ryan Suter, where is he going to land? I mean, is Seth Jones, does he end up in Chicago? Does he end up in Dallas? I think there's a lot of things that are in play. We know Shane Gostisbehere going to the Arizona Coyotes, and it'll take some time to get used to that. But the Coyotes are now in the Central Division, right, Huss? I mean, this is something that it's going to take a little bit of getting used to. But I think probably Jets fans, once that border opens up, they'll be happy to add a extra road trip to Arizona in the coming months, if you will. So excited to see that schedule coming out here this afternoon also.
Yeah, definitely. We'll chop that up tomorrow on the program, as well as some more draft talk going into the first round on Friday, and of course the rest of the festivities on Saturday. Ken, let's get back to yesterday. What did you think about the picks of the Kraken? First of all, that there were no side deals made was sort of a mind-blowing revelation that we found out today. I think a lot of people were okay, well, why the heck because there were some guys that, I mean, to be honest, my take now, knowing what we know, is that, there were players that Ron Francis just decided for teams to basically just pass on. I mean, they took John Quenneville. John Quenneville is going to be a free agent going forward. I mean, they grabbed some younger players at the expense of some more established players. But to me, it comes back to the fact that maybe the most valuable asset the Kraken had before they even made any picks was the ability to have a ton of cap space and weaponize that with some teams that need to make moves. Thoughts on that and what we can deduce from the selections that Francis made?
Yeah, certainly interesting, Huss. Obviously, it was a great day for our friend Frank Saravalli. We know that for certain. Frank,
what a clinic!
Yeah, it was an impressive showing by our friend, and hat tip or stick tap for him.
Hey, let me ask you this. I mean,
sure.
You know this far more than me. I mean, how does one guy get all of that information and crank it out? I mean, there's a lot of really talented, successful guys in that business, and yet Frank, from wherever he is cranking out like 90% of the expansion draft before it comes out. Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah, I mean, it was an impressive display. That's about relationship building, Huss. That's about all I can let go of the secret sauce there, I think. But just a nice job on that front for sure. I mean, that's about fostering relationships on all fronts, whether that's management teams, players, agents, and all of those things. In terms of Francis, interesting choices. We know there's not a huge bunch of names on the marquee, but I mean, we talk about local guys all the time, and what a great experience for Chris Drieger, right, Huss? I mean, that was just an absolutely, and again, this is, if you're a goalie, this is the story that you should be reading up on. It's a rare story, but this is a guy who had to claw his way from the ECHL to a number one job on a team that had a $10 million goalie, and basically ripped the job right out of his hands and turned that into becoming the number one goalie on an expansion team. I think that's an absolutely fabulous showing by a guy that I don't know Chris at all, but I know that that's a great story, and you don't get to do that type of thing without having an incredible work ethic and being an incredible hard worker. And of course, you have to get some breaks along the way, but this is a guy who had to make his own breaks, and I think it's a really impressive story worth celebrating, and good on him for getting a 3-year deal at $3.5 million, and to be a shot at worst the 1A guy, and great for him to get that opportunity. And I think he's going to really flourish, and I think he handled himself really well in the television show, and I watched the Zoom call afterward, and great opportunity for him. And I think there's going to be some Kraken fans in Manitoba, because he's going to be one of the guys kind of waving the flag, if you will.
Ken, now going forward into this weekend, like, the one thing Vegas had after the expansion draft was 3 first-round picks. They had, they'd acquired a whole bunch of capital, not to mention that the players that they ended up getting, we talked about the 2 players from Florida, the 2 from Minnesota. I mean, it could not have worked out any better. Certainly, it seems like lessons were learned by NHL GMs based on what happened back when Vegas did their picks. So knowing what we know now, the fact that they have all of this salary cap space, how do you see them going forward? I mean, will there be more moves made with players? I mean, I know Tyler Picklick was traded for, I believe, a 4th rounder to Calgary earlier today. Might we see a few more guys that were selected yesterday be dealt? And where will the moves be made for Seattle? Does it happen in and around free agency? Or essentially, is it whenever these teams feel comfortable to make the trades, or Ron Francis, is willing to pull the trigger on deals to take on salary? I mean, is that what he's holding closest to his vest right now?
Yeah, I think so, Huston. I mean, the one guy we talked about, Dougie Hamilton, earlier, I mean, he's obviously the top target in free agency. He'll be getting a lot of calls from basically any team who's looking for a defenseman that can afford it.
Are the Jets one of those teams?
I think they have to be. I don't know how comfortable or how high the Jets are willing to go, but I think if the Jets are going to be in on Dougie Hamilton, they have to be in at that $8 or $9 million range. They have to win the bid, right? I mean, there are going to be other places, whether it's a Seattle or a New Jersey, or, if you're a contender, you're looking at Dougie Hamilton. Even with Gostisbehere going to Arizona, I think I'm just not sure how comfortable Arizona is going to be handing out a, 7-year deal at $8 or $9 million. So I think the Jets have to be making that call, whether that's a high salary on a short-term deal or trying to solve the problem long-term. I think you have to be in on it. But to me, I mean, the Seattle Kraken have, they would have the ability to lock down a Dougie Hamilton basically for whatever number you want. And you have to believe that one of the reasons they bypassed on Carey Price was because they have some other things in mind. And I would not be surprised if Dougie Hamilton was one of them. We talked about, not having a big name guy for the marquee necessarily. I mean, Jordan Eberle is a guy who has some star power, but I mean, we're not looking at a Marc-Andre Fleury situation. So Carey Price would have been a guy who you could, you'd have on all of the billboards and everything of that nature. But they're speaking about calculated risks. I mean, Marc Bergevin came out of that pretty well also, but I don't think they're going to be, spending this entire, wad of cash in free agency, but I think they're going to leave themselves open to weaponizing, whether that be, leading into the draft here or free agency or the deadline, right?
Think about these deals that Arizona's made. I mean, right. they took on Andrew Ladd for 2 seconds and a third. They just took on Ghost, and I know someone was asking, like, what did Philly get back for Gostisbehere? Right. Well, not only did they not get anything back, they also had to pay a 2nd rounder and a 7th rounder for them to take that contract. It's quite interesting that you have that market setting up, and I think that might be, honestly, if more than anything, that trade with the Islanders, Ken, I think maybe kind of told Ron Francis that, instead of picking some guys with more salary, we might be better off looking to the future as a franchise to give ourselves the more option to take a few more players for teams that are desperate to do it and bend them over while we're at it and take picks and prospects to make things work for us long term.
Well, and that's the other part too, Huss. When Seattle is in a position where they can win, they want to have that salary open. Everyone is talking about them being kind of a conduit to taking on bad contracts. Well, what does that benefit them, right? I mean, Jerry Bruckheimer didn't buy the team so he could pay a player to play elsewhere, I don't think. So I think that they're going to leave that space mostly open in order to try to, load up when they're a winning team. I mean, can they follow the Vegas model? I mean, it's a pretty high standard getting to the final the first year, conference final 3 years out of the first 4. So I think that they will take, anyone who knows Ron Francis, and I do not know him well, but from talking to people who do know him, he's a very meticulous builder. So I don't think that they were going to be pushing the chips to the middle of the table all that quickly. I think they'll be very patient in terms of their team building. But the one thing we noticed, Huss, yes, their defense core looks good. There's a glaring hole or two on the right side that, I mean, if you're planning to spend some of that money on Dougie Hamilton, it would make a lot of sense to me. But let's see how the market, works out here in the next couple of days and, see how things develop. But I do expect Ron Francis to be active, but I don't think he's going to be spending all of that money. I don't think they're going to be a ceiling team by the time we get through free agency.
Quickly away from the Jets for a second. Gabe Landeskog and Tarasenko. How do you see those playing out, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the New York Islanders clearing out some money. If I'm the New York Islanders, I am offering Gabe Landeskog, a high number. I don't know what that number is, but they're basically we're a goal scorer away from,
He'd be a perfect Islander too. I mean, he just seems like the way he plays fits so well with Trotz and Lou. And I hadn't thought about the Islanders, but I think that, the minute you said that guy is an Islander. And Anders Lee has his contract and he'll be back, so he wouldn't just be walking in and being the captain of a new team. But he's exactly the prototype player that those guys want on their squad.
Yeah, I think he's a perfect fit there. I mentioned it too, on Kenny and Rennie, that I think the Montreal Canadiens should be looking at Gabe Landeskog as well, and adding another big, strong leader to their group. But I think the Islanders are a perfect fit for Landeskog. A lot of people have had him linked to the St. Louis Blues, and yes, that does make sense. But to me, if I'm Landeskog and I'm not staying in Colorado, I'm looking at the team that pushed the Tampa Bay Lightning to Game 7 2 years in a row. I know that I can win there. I know that I can help them with all of the intangibles, with being a winner and bringing that physical element and being a guy that can play on the first power play if you want him to. So that's where I see him heading. We know Philadelphia has some interest in Vladimir Tarasenko. What level that interest is intriguing. They've also been linked to Sam Reinhart here, I think, in the last couple of hours. So I don't see a clear-cut fit for Vladimir Tarasenko, but we know that goal scoring is something that is in short supply on a lot of teams, and I don't think that Doug Armstrong will have a lot of trouble finding a new home for him. But he obviously laid the groundwork today in saying that Tarasenko is going to need to be open to returning. So that will be interesting to me. But I don't see him returning to the Blues. But in terms of where he fits best, that it's still a little bit too early to.
Well, the money's a big part of that. And I'll be honest, I wouldn't at all be surprised if we see a 3-way deal with the Kraken brokering it, getting a few picks, taking on $2 or $3 million of the salary, and moving him on to a spot where a team can swallow that number and take the risk on a Vladimir Tarasenko. Kenny, this was awesome. Before we go, and we're going to hear from Kevin Cheveldayoff at the bottom of the hour. When are you and Rennie getting back at it? You got anything cooking over the course of the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a free agency show. We did talk about the expansion draft show, but sort of the air came out of the balloon with all the picks kind of coming out.
All to our benefit yesterday afternoon.
Exactly. We were thinking about following the show, but by that time everything was already out. So gonna have a free agency follow-up show, I think, on the 28th, but we'll kind of keep that going and leave it to you to hold down the fort. And the Illegal Curve Boys, we know they're pretty active around this time as well.
Well, listen, you let us know what's going on. We'll make sure everyone else does as well. Kenny, thanks for doing this, man. We'll talk to you soon. Great stuff.
Yeah, take care, Huss, and have a great rest of the show and rest of the week here. Enjoy the action.
There he is, the one and only Wiebe's World himself. Give him a follow on Twitter and make sure you're sub to Kenny and Rennie. They'll have some content revolving around the Winnipeg Jets and the National Hockey League at some point coming up. All right, we're going to get to the draft. As I mentioned, Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to be speaking at the bottom of the hour. We'll try and bring you that live here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Just before we get to Michael Farkas, do want to shout out our friends at Knott Autocorp. I'm talking to Trev last night. I get the Knott bus is getting fired up for that Bomber home opener on the 5th of August. And you might not need a Knott bus, but you can get an incredible vehicle at an amazing price with our friends at Knott Autocorp. Why not pop down to Waverly and McGillivray or check them out online at knott.ca for all the incredible vehicles they have, including their selections of Teslas. They'll also service the car as well as detail it. So much to get to at Knott Autocorp, and of course, proud sponsors and supporters of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as well. Pop down and see them, Knott Autocorp, Waverly and McGillivray, or online at knott.ca. Well, you know what? Cheers to all the new Kraken. Unfortunately, they're in Seattle, not Winnipeg, so they can't enjoy the amazing taste of Little Brown Jug. This, of course, is the summer lager we've been chugging all summer long, along with the amazing Hefeweizen. And now you can get it not only delivered to your home, easy, simply, same-day delivery at littlebrownjug.ca. You can get it in the summer variety pack at any of your local beer stores, but you can also enjoy the great taste of all of their beers, including the flagship 1919 at the brewery and tap house on the patio now that the health restrictions are loosened. Pop down and see them on William Avenue. But you get the hours on the site. I believe it's 12 to 8 daily. And obviously you can pile the beer there as well. Great merchandise. Big thanks to our friends at Little Brown Jug. And they're everywhere in the community. Go to the events page at littlebrownjug.ca and find out where you can hook up with them, either at the gardening centers or in the community on the weekend. It's all there at littlebrownjug.ca. And the 3M Open is underway in golf. Not quite a huge field. Dustin Johnson is the favorite. And obviously, if you're golfing here in Winnipeg, Breezy Bend, the spot you want to check out. Another Manitoba amateur champion coming out of Breezy Bend with Braxton Coots winning this week. An amazing junior program that continues to crank out talented young players. Find out more about maybe playing there for you and your family next year. breezybend.ca or give him a call. Corey Johnson, our friend there, will take good care of you over at breezybend.ca. All right, Cheveldayoff coming up a little later on. Right now, though, let's welcome in Michael Farkas from Hockey Prospect to get ready for Friday's first round. Tomorrow, geez, this week's gone fast. Tomorrow's first round of the NHL Draft. Michael, thanks so much for doing this. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
You know what? I'm doing great. I mean, usually late July, we sort of a dead zone for hockey talk. It's the exact opposite this year. I mean, the expansion draft last night, draft this weekend, free agency next week. We knew it would be packed together, but I have to say, it was exciting, even with Frank Saravelli blowing up all the surprises tweet by tweet yesterday. Pretty interesting to see what Seattle's done, and a very unique year and very unique offseason, and certainly for guys in the scouting line of work, about as unique a year as possible, getting ready for the biggest weekend of the year. What's it been like preparing for this year's draft as opposed to other seasons?
Yeah, and preparedness that's really the word of the year, right? So as a group for us, it's about, how well prepared for the 2021 class were we from last year, what we saw as we went along, because we prepared that early list. And then, how prepared were we to, it's a different skill set seeing players live versus on video. So it's a different eye. So just having our group prepared, and Mark did a great job and having us prepared about what it is that we have to be doing and what it is we have to be looking for. And some of the pitfalls that come with doing a lot more video scouting than we were planning or hoping to do. So preparedness is really the key thing, and you'll see who's well prepared Friday and Saturday.
You of course you mentioned Mark Edwards, Michael, part of the Hockey Prospect team getting ready. How, when you guys got together, and you're focusing on particular countries, other guys, you're putting it all together. How would you assess the overall quality of this year's draft, and how difficult was it to assess that from the get-go? Yeah,
you're telling me. Yeah, difficult to assess the greater, because you have whole areas that aren't playing. You had no OHL. The dub was muted after just a handful of games. The Q and some other places were a little bit herky-jerky about their starts and stops. Tournaments came in the question, et cetera. So I look at this draft class overall, I'd say it's about average, maybe slightly below. But one thing that I think is interesting, and this is kind of my theory, I don't know how many people will agree with it, but it's not going to be like 1979 where we had that double draft class and everything was great for everybody. But look out for 2022 as maybe a 1.25 or even a 1.5 draft class, so to speak, where a lot of guys are going to come out of the woodwork that we didn't get to see, people that didn't get to travel over to Europe, et cetera, et cetera. You might actually end up with a bunch of 19-year-olds that get picked next year that create super class would be too far to say, but something a little bit meatier than maybe what this draft has.
You focus in on the Americans, Russians, Finland. How was there a difficulty in scouting or comparing players, or how did that work with the guys that were actually on the ice as opposed to Canadians that best case scenario played a tiny bit of a season? If you were an OHL player, you never played at all.
Yeah, it's difficult, right? And it goes back to how we started with the preparedness aspect of it. What did we know going in? Who do we know that we can rely on that knows what's going on with some of these players? And part of it, you get guys that just simply didn't play games, or they only played an international tournament here and there. You have to kind of trust your instincts on what you know, right? You can't base it on what you don't know. So you know what you know. And then it's just a matter of getting everybody on the same page about, your region. So luckily for me with Russia and Finland, Russia all but ignored COVID. So it was pretty easy to see games there all the time. They played a full boat 64 game schedule. They were fine. The Finns did a fine job of keeping all their, they made some changes, but they got a good season in there. And then the U.S. was able to go ahead with an abbreviated run. So it was really just, you watch the guys that you can watch, and then you have to use your best judgment about what's going to happen with the guys that couldn't really play, and how does that factor in? I mean, that's development damaging. You look back at the 2003 draft where we had the 05 lockout, but during that big sleep, a lot of guys could go back to junior another year. They could go in the AHL another year. That Calder Cup final that year was amazing. I was there. It was great hockey because Jeff Carter is there, Jake Omeester's there. All these guys are there. And you look at how many guys in that 2003 class panned out to become impact players. Well, now it's the opposite, right? Now you have less games involved and less development time. How is that going to affect you? That's why I think you might see some teams, because of that, and because of maybe the preparedness factor, watch for trades on Saturday where you see a fourth this year for a fourth next year, a fifth for the same slot next year, something like that. Teams kind of punting, not wanting to go full in if they weren't prepared to handle how this world was.
Hockey prospects Michael Farkas with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk, getting ready for tomorrow's first round of the NHL Draft. It seems like everyone expects Owen Power to be the number one player selected. Are you on board with that? And is Matt Beniers likely to go to Seattle as the first ever Kraken draft pick?
That's a great question, right? So to start with one, Owen Power, I mean, if you watched him at the World Championships, if there was any doubt, which there was, internally we talked about it. We came into the year with Kent Johnson at one. We talked about Owen Power at one time, just on my personal list. I had him as in the low area of the top five at some points during the year. And then the progression over the course of the year, what he did at the World Championships against men, where, it was thought he would be an afterthought, comes in, plays 20 plus minutes and looks amazing doing so. So that cements you as a number one right there. That removes all doubt. For number two, is it Matty Beniers? Maybe. That's about as sure of a pick as I've seen in a while. Two-way guy, great head on his shoulders. Maybe not an elite skill set, probably maybe a 2C if I had to choose, but look at how difficult, look at the protections that were out there in the expansion draft. Not a lot of centers available for Seattle. Matty Beniers would fill that role as you look at the trust that was given to him at Michigan, a high-level program, right? And you have a true freshman at 18, and he's playing center, and for a lot of that time had a true freshman in Ken Johnson on his left wing. That's a lot of trust from a big-time coach in Matty Beniers. So that just shows how pro-ready he is. Is he the number two pick? I don't know. He's not the most dynamic talent that would be available there, but he wouldn't be a bad pick.
The most familiar name in the draft is Hughes, and it's not Jack, it's not Quint, it's the third Hughes brother, Luke. Tell us about him and how does he compare to his brothers?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? I don't know how many of you, they might make a team of Hugheses soon. That'll be team 33. So Luke's different than Quinn, right? The natural thought is you want to compare him to his brother, the Vancouver defenseman. A little different. Luke Hughes is a bigger kid. He's got a thicker trunk, thicker legs, but his skating base is unbelievable. Quinn and Jack kind of tap dance around the rink a little bit. You feel Hughes is a more fluid stride. And he eats up so much ground so fast, and his recovery skating is really there. He's an offensive whiz too. He's got great puck handling skills. I don't know that there's a defenseman in this draft that handles the puck on his backhand better than Luke Hughes, which is something a lot of defensemen struggle with. So you're talking about you can retrieve the puck forehand and backhand and not really miss a step. You can play him on probably either side as a result of how good he is on his backhand. You're talking about if he's playing on his offside on the right, those backhand keep-ins aren't maybe so tough for Luke. I really am impressed with how he handles pucks on his backhand. Where you maybe look and go, well, it's a little bit different than Quinn and Jack is maybe it's a little less thoughtful right now. He's one of the youngest players in this draft class. He just made the cut for 2021, but even adjusting for that, you look at the risk management, both offensively and defensively. Just look at the outlet passes. Is he really making the smartest play? Is he really putting his forwards in the best position to to advance the puck. Defensively, you look at him and sustained attacks against, and just where is he with the checks in his lateral and his peripheral? What happened to the guys behind him? Does he lose track of some guys? Does he chase them plays around? I think there's going to be some work there in terms of just how thoughtful he is about the game. And, as you move up levels, the processor that's involved, how do you think the game, how fast is it hitting you? Does the game ever play you? You want to make sure that he's got a good, sturdy development path so you can maximize his potential, because it's just about how he sees the game that needs to be ironed out.
Hockey prospects Michael Farkas with us here. Michael, obviously we're here in the Peg. Jets will be on the clock at 18, which will be the 17th pick after forfeiture goes to Arizona. Right. Any thoughts on who might be available for Kevin Cheveldayoff and his staff when we get to Winnipeg selection?
Yeah, so that's a long way down, even with the forfeiture, right? But I love the spot because I think this is the spot. I'm not risk averse when it comes to scouting. I want to hit impact players, and I scout with that in mind. So I don't think it does. Is Winnipeg? I know you lost Mason Appleton to Seattle. Is Winnipeg really a third line player away from winning the Stanley Cup? I'm not sure that they are. I think you can't have enough impact pieces. Look at how difficult it is, right, to find an impact piece. Where is Nikita Kucherov going? Nowhere. Where is Nathan McKinnon going? Nowhere. Where is Nikolai Ehlers going? Nowhere. I know, so I like to try to hit a home run in this spot. I really like the defenseman Aleksi Haimo-Salmi from Finland. I think he's a guy, he's not ranked very high on a lot of lists that I've seen out there. Not that means a lot. It just takes one team to like you. I really like him. I would take a shot on Ilya Fedotov too, from Russia, who may not get drafted at all, but to me, he's a first round talent. I think with a little bit, depending on which way you look at it, right? You don't want to draft for need right here, but I think Winnipeg's defensive stockade could be improved a little bit right now. So I would probably go with Aleksi Haimo-Salmi if I had the choice there at 18.
Hey, speaking of Finns, I wanted to ask you about the top-ranked Finnish skater Atu Räty, who in the past we had seen him as high as number 1. Where is his stock going into the weekend?
Not one. So this is one of those cases that you see every once in a while. John McFarland was kind of like this. Even going back, maybe even Jesse Puljujärvi, when I saw him as a 16-year-old, the Edmonton forward, I thought, oh, this is the number 1 pick in his draft class. And then kind of stagnated a little bit. Looks like it's going to get pulled out of the fire there. He had a good year this year. This was just a case where a player looked really good at 16. I saw him at 16. He was a really good player. He was in that discussion. And, he got hit. I think he got hit with COVID, a couple of injuries. Now he's up in the pro game. It just really hasn't progressed that much. There's really not. He's got good compete. He's got an okay skill level. I don't think he's a particularly good skater. I don't think he's a particularly dynamic skill set. So for me, I have him as a late round pick at best. I think someone's going to give him a shot probably in the middle rounds. But for me, he wouldn't make it to where I'm selecting, I don't think.
All right, one more for you, Michael. It's been a great chat. And I think the uncertainty of this, and we even talked about the Jets with only 4 picks. I mean, if they've got a number of players that they really like that are available, I wouldn't rule out trading back and trying to get more picks because they only have 4. But outside of the first round, is there a player or two that you expect to be picked outside of round 1, like a Saturday pick that, is exciting, and if your team picks them, you should be pretty happy about?
Yeah, the 2 guys, in addition to the 2 guys that I mentioned, in Haimo-Salmi and Fedotov, who, again, won't be on a lot of high rankings, I really like from the United States, I like Sasha Pastujov from the program. He's, again, maybe not super flashy, but he gets pucks. He sets a lot of picks. He has advanced just how he boxes things out, how he wins puck battles. He's not super fast, but he's really smart for me. He wins a lot of battles. I'd be really excited to have a player like that. He's a guy that could come along later. I think defenseman in Russia, Igor Savakov. Mark's going to hate me for this, but I'm the biggest backer of smaller defensemen. I think guys that are 5'9", 5'10" that can skate. I think that's where the league's going on third pairings. I don't think it's the 6'5" off the glass and out guys. I think Victor Mete, the kid in Buffalo that got called up, Jacob Bryson, I believe is his name. I think those are the guys that are where the league's going. Igor Savakov is that, and he's super active, super smart, plays an aggressive game, but smartly, and led all Russian defensemen in points in the Russian Junior League. It's the first time a first-year draft eligible has finished top 5 among defensive scoring in 5 years, much less led it. So he's got production. He's really smart. He can really skate. I'd be thrilled to get that player.
Michael, this has been awesome. Where can people find you on Twitter? I guess if you're watching live on YouTube, it's Michael Farkas F or Farkas HF. Tell us about where else they can find you. I know you do some neat hockey breakdowns on YouTube too.
Yeah, I try to put together some videos here and there. They got a lot. That's, part of that was how Mark found me in the first place, I think, for Hockey Prospect. But I'd really encourage people to buy the Black Book. I think it's 600 something pages this year. I'm a big chunk of that, along with the great crew that we have. YouTube, Twitter. I'm around on there. Find me.
Hey, well, let's do this again sometime. Really appreciate you coming out.
Thanks for this, Hustler. Talk to you soon.
Appreciate it. There's Michael Farkas, a hockey prospect. Mark Edwards, of course, a good friend of our show. And it really is an elite package when it comes to draft preparation. If you're trying to do some cramming before tomorrow, hockey prospect where you want to go. Big thanks to Michael for joining us. All right. Big shout out to our friends at Assiniboia Downs. The big news, told you earlier, fans are coming back Monday, 50% in the main level and the outdoor area. You'll just have to make sure that you're vaccinated. No different than going to a Bomber game, Valor FC game, or coming in August, a Goldeye game. Find out more right now. You still can go to the terrace dining room or the VLT area upstairs on the second area level. And actually that area, much like a restaurant, you don't have to be vaccinated for. Reservations need to be made though for the terrace dining room. But to focus on, if you want to get out with the family, be outside. Thank God we're going to be back. It's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Live racing next week. And it's all there. For more information, go to Assiniboia Downs. They actually tweeted it out. I got the press release earlier, threw that out. A lot of people excited to get back to the track a little bit later on. And of course, our friends out at Aikens Lake, give them if you're ever thinking about an incredible world-class fishing adventure right here in Manitoba, you'll be able to be on the water in a couple hours from Winnipeg. AikensLake.com on the web, or you can hit them up on Twitter at Aikens Lake. We'll get to the cool bet lines a little bit later on the program because I think we're going to have Kevin Cheveldayoff joining us in just a couple of minutes. But let's get Michael Remis back in here for a second. Man, there was a neat hockey draft talk that we had with Michael Farkas. We'll do more of that tomorrow with Scott Wheeler of The Athletic on the program. But Reem, we've got the general manager of the Winnipeg Jets coming up, and this timing is working out perfectly. As long as it's on schedule, we'll be able to give it to all of our Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners in the next couple minutes.
Yes, it's like they knew that our show was on now, and they scheduled the press conference for the end. So we're kind of just waiting for Chevy to step up to the podium. We have it, going on. And Mitch wrote in chat, they released a statement about the Blackhawks investigation here. I can't pull it up. I'm waiting for the thing. I know Murat has it on
I've got it right here, actually. Ken Wiebe has just tweeted this out. So this is the tweet from Ken. Jets general manager Kevin Cheveldayoff is set to speak to reporters at 2:30. He just released a statement through the team regarding former Blackhawks video coach Brad Aldrich and the ongoing sexual abuse investigation. Cheveldayoff was the assistant GM of the Blackhawks in 2010.
He's at the podium. Let me just sorry to interrupt you. Keep going.
Okay, while you're getting it, here's the quote. I had no knowledge of any allegations involving Mr. Aldrich until asked if I was aware of anything prior to the conclusion of his employment with the Chicago Blackhawks. After confirming I had no prior knowledge of anything, I had no further involvement. As this is a legal matter before the courts, I will not be making any further comment. However, to the extent I am contacted by investigators in this matter, I will cooperate to the best of my ability and knowledge. So The team putting that out, we knew that, Cheveldayoff would be asked about that, presumably by media the next time he met the media. So, while it is a legal case, this isn't. No knowledge of any allegations involving Mr. Aldrich until asked if I was aware of anything just prior to the conclusion of his employment with the Chicago Blackhawks. So, I know the focus is going to be on what's happening with the Winnipeg Jets, losing Mason Appleton, the draft, free agency, but no doubt that something on this was going to come out. How close are we, Bream?
He's ready to go. Let's do it.
All right, down. Kevin Cheveldayoff.
It was a tough call to make, to both Mason and Dylan, to tell them that we had left them unprotected. It was a tough call to make to Mason, to tell him obviously that he was a selection. It was a pretty joyous call to make to Dylan DeMello to say that he was still part of the Jets. So lots of emotion there, but it's a bittersweet thing. It's on the eve of the draft. We end up losing a player that that was drafted, that went through our development process, that became a key contributor in the American League, and then a solid key contributor in the National Hockey League. And it just kind of underscores what the process of this weekend really is all about. And proud of how Mason has come through the organization, and wish him all the best. It creates a hole in our lineup for sure that we're obviously exploring right now the different ways to patch that up.
We'll go next to Kelly Moore from 680 CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thanks very much, Gregor. Good afternoon, Kevin. Yeah, just in terms of patching that up, does that happen internally? Does that maybe happen with what might take place on the draft? Well, not the draft board Friday, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna, we obviously have been planning, that something might happen for a while now. So we've been in our scouting meetings. We've been identifying, who could be out there in free agency, who might be out there in trade, if this scenario happened, or if other scenarios happen. So it's still a work in progress. We're I guess a week, just under a week away from free agency. So lots can happen between now and then, and we're going to spend the time exploring all those different options. There could be some internal options of maybe a Vesalainen moving to the right side or something like that. But those things, you have to have some conversations with the coaches and see, where they feel, that is at as well.
We'll go next to Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Gregor. Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
You mentioned difficult calls to Dylan and Mason, obviously, to tell them about not being protected. Can you just take us through the process of, I guess, deciding on your protected list? And I guess the big one that certainly made a lot of noise was protecting Logan Stanley and leaving Dylan exposed.
So what you find out through this process is, who you, everybody does their own, kind of internal protection list of all the different teams. So we spend a tremendous amount of time in the pro scouting meetings, putting what we think is going to be the protection list of the other teams, and then so you can go and make some calls to them to see if there's a guy that you like that you think is going to be on the outside, if they would be interested in a trade. So we, obviously that process is not unique to us. The other teams do the same thing, and they came down to, basically the same conclusions that I think everyone was coming down to. So we had a lot of calls on Logan to see if we'd be interested in trading him as opposed to potentially losing him. And so we went through that process, and became very apparent that even if Seattle wasn't the ultimate destination, there was a lot of places that might have reached out to Seattle to go in that regard. So it doesn't make it any easier to have to make that decision to put your list in. But there's always going to be risks. We knew going in that we were going to lose a very good player, and it was, you're on pins and needles there a little bit as after you hit send, but you let the process play itself out.
We'll go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Kevin. Just to switch gears here a little bit, what can you tell us about when you first learned of the assault allegations against Brad Aldrich during your time in Chicago?
So obviously, I think issued a statement here just moments before the press conference here, and we'll stand by that statement. These are very serious allegations, and you never take them lightly. And obviously, it's a matter that's in front of the courts, and that's really, I guess, essentially, that's why I put the statement out there, and we'll go from there. And again, if the investigators, if there's an opportunity for me to meet with them, I definitely will.
We'll go next to Greg Wyshynski from ESPN. Go ahead, Greg.
Thanks a lot. Hey, Kevin, I had a question actually about the schedule for next year. I saw that they are not doing the 2 home games together homestand thing like they did this year.
Yeah.
I was wondering your feelings on that. I feel like that'd be a good thing for a team that does a little bit of traveling to have a couple of days in the same spot.
Yeah, so it was something that we talked about, and I think I don't know if it's because of the uniqueness of having the Olympic potential Olympic break in there, if they couldn't make that work, or if there were other reasons. But I know from a hockey standpoint, I think the coaches liked it. I think the players had some time for it. Obviously, it does get old in some respects where when you have to do a whole entire season of it. So I know that there was maybe a small appetite to have a little bit more of a trial in that situation. But schedule makers, I think, were under a real tough type of situation here, and now it was a lot easier, I think, and again, I may be putting words in their mouths. I think it was a lot easier when we were in a COVID situation, and really there was no building issues at that point in time. I think you've got teams that have multiple tenants. You've got concerts. Again, all the wonderful things that we've missed over this period of time. I do think that probably came into play when they tried to put it in practical use.
We'll go next to Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weber.
Thanks, Gregor. Afternoon, Kevin. Shifting gears to the draft, how would you describe the depth of player available in your range, and what were some of the biggest challenges with the limited live viewings for your scouting staff this year, and how did you tackle those?
So it certainly was a challenge. We had some scouts that were more fortunate than others that were able to have some live views. Certainly the players in Europe there was more opportunity to see them for the scouts, and in the U.S. as well. I think it was great that there was an opportunity at the end of the year in Dallas for a U18 tournament that is always a big scouting tournament when it comes to it, and the participation of a lot of the Canadian players that maybe didn't get a chance to play in the CHL, at least gave them an opportunity to showcase themselves there. But man, oh man, lots and lots of video. We became pretty efficient in that video. We've got a good staff that spends a lot of time, cutting the video and doing the different things. Barrett Laganchuk, our scouting coordinator, just did an awesome job of feeding all of us in the organization with manageable video. So being able to, get multiple views of certain players in kind of more expeditious time, so a better use of your time, so to speak. So you have to really find a way to be efficient and to get the views, and I think as it went on, your eye kind of became more trained on how to watch the video for the things that you need. There's going to be some good players. It's going to be an interesting process. Is it going to be as tight to your list, as in the past? I don't know. I think there's some good players in our range there that we'd be real excited to have. We've some of the players that we've picked in the past in this range have gone on to be very good players for our organization right now. So it'll be it's still in the refining final stages, and we're still working that through.
We'll go next to Sarah Lesky from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, Kevin. Just wondering, when looking ahead to whether it be free agency or via trade, when you look at your blue line, how many defensemen are you looking to hopefully target or add through that process?
It'll be a function of a couple of things, I think. One, there has to be an opportunity in front of us that makes sense. We can, there's lots of names out there that people say would be great fits, but the fit has to be the right thing for both sides. Again, it'll be a function of cap as well. There's only so much, so many dollars that we can, shift around or do different things with that respect. So, and we have to give, some value to the young players that we have in the organization and put them up beside what a potential free agent, might look like and see, where things are going to be at, 20, 30, 40 games down the road. Would you be better in a better position with, those players having played, that amount of games and that amount of experience. So a lot of it goes in. We're still a long way from free agency. So, who's going to be left on the board when the clock starts, so to speak, will be, I guess, interesting to see.
Go next to Carter Brooks from Game On. Go ahead, Carter.
Hi, Kevin. I know you mentioned already a little bit about Mason Appleton and the decision you made there.
Yeah.
But how difficult was it to kind of go with this? We've seen the Jets go through the draft and develop model for so many years, and someone that has gone through so well with Mason Appleton through the Moose, putting together his campaigns in the AHL, then coming to the NHL and starting to flourish. How tough was it to make that call?
Oh, it was real tough. Again, and we had a meeting this morning with our amateur scouts, and I led off the meeting, with that very comment that, again, it was because of the scouting that they did and the pick that we made that, obviously we had an NHL player. But we all knew when Seattle was coming in that there was going to, be an opportunity to lose a piece of your team. We discussed with Seattle about what it would take to potentially not lose a piece off our team, but there was nothing that would work for me, to make a deal that was going to satisfy that. So, like I say, when you get ready to hit send on your protection list, you take a deep breath, and there was lots of conversation and dialogue, and it became what it became. And when I got the call from Ron Francis yesterday morning that he had made that claim, I think the only sigh of relief is that now we can move forward, and at least which path you're going down, and Mason's going to be a good player there. I think he's going to, I think with an increased role there, he's going to flourish, and good for him. And we wish him all the best.
Go back to Kelly Moore from 680 CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Kevin, you mentioned the fact that the list could really be changing on Friday night. How deep do you think the draft goes before the uncertainty starts to happen? Is it the first 5, first 8? Where do you see the muddling start to begin?
Yeah, I think there's several different tiers. I think, certainly you have the high-end tier, where, again, the players that are going real high there are going to be real special and probably earlier, sooner rather than later. And I think there's maybe a little bit of a middle tier. And then I think there's a pretty solid, kind of tier just below that middle tier that's right there. So I think that's where we're in, with our pick. And then I think, slightly after our pick, I think there's a little bit of a drop off.
We'll go back to Mike McIntyre from the Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks again, Gregor. Kevin, just sort of a two-parter here on the state of your own players or guys that were on your roster this past year. I realize you probably can't give us too much by way of details, but can you give us a general sense of negotiations with your two RFAs in Neil and Andrew? And with regards to your UFAs, I know you re-signed Dominic. Can you give us a sense, I guess, of is the door open on any of those guys and any specifics before next Wednesday?
So on the two UFAs, we've had kind of preliminary conversations with both of their camps. They're obviously in different situations where you own them, you qualify them, you go through a certain process. I think from a UFA standpoint, we've had conversations, I think, with all the UFA's agents, and I would say it's best described as a lot of balls in the air type thing, and every decision affects another decision, whether it comes to position or cap, or free agency or trade. So it's one of those things where you have to kind of be methodical, I guess, in the process.
Go next to Ted Wyman from The Sun. Go ahead, Ted.
Kevin, you keep DeMello around, but you've got a lot more left shot defensemen under contract right now than you do right shot defensemen.
Yeah.
Is there a priority on trying to add at that particular position, right shot defenseman, through free agency or trades?
Well, I think I think it stares at you first. I think when you look at the screen, that's what you see first. When I look up on my board, our youth is on the left side. It's sometimes you've got guys that maybe can play the right side, but in the process of trying to add, I think you first keep an open mind and see what might be there, whether it's right side or left side, through trade or potential free agency, and then you hone in on it. You see where, is this a better opportunity for the money, and vice versa. So it comes into play, but I think, again, it's not a perfect world here. There's not always that perfect, right-hand shot, fit that's, 6'4", 260 pounds that can shoot the puck like crazy and, used to ragdoll two players all the time.
Well, back to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Sorry, that was a really good answer. Did you find, Kevin, there was a sense of urgency based on where players like Blake and Mark and Connor Hellebuck are? You've got them under control for another 3 years.
Yeah.
I know you've got some great prospects coming up that are probably going to fill things in and be really great NHL players. But is there a sense of urgency maybe in taking care of the window that your team has in front of you right now and trying to solve some of these problems that you have on the back end right now?
Well, we've been in that mode really since since the day that we actually were able to kind of re-sign Blake Wheeler. It was one of those things where if he had gone off into free agency, I think the path of the organization probably goes in a different direction. We've had a lot of ups and downs and bumps and unforeseen things happen to us along the way. Be it Brian Little, be it Buff, those type of situations that we've had to, kind of pivot on the fly. And we've been able to make the postseason, while still doing that. So that urgency has been there, right from, like I say, that moment on, and it continues moving forward here. And we're fortunate that we have a good group. What's happened along the way is, players like Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers have really come into their own. Obviously we made that decision several years ago to give Connor Hellebuck the reins and let him cut his teeth in the National Hockey League, and that decision has helped us to get to that point where we're at here now with a Vezina winning goaltender. So yeah, we're hopeful that we can find ways to address the opportunities. Again, have to be there, and we're hopeful that we can find our way.
Go back to Carter Brooks from Game On. Go ahead, Carter.
Hi again, Kevin. You just mentioned Brian Little. How difficult has it been the past couple of summers or past couple of off seasons now, kind of not entirely knowing what the situation is there, or unless maybe something new has come to light? Have there been any developments on the Brian Little front?
No. So Brian's essentially in our estimation here is we're treating it, and he's treating it like he's not playing unless a doctor comes and says, you're cleared. And there's no doctors right now that are going to do that. So from that standpoint, although he's not retired, like he's a player that's not available to us.
Go back to Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weber.
Kevin, what was your reaction to the news earlier today that the AHL might be an option for Cole Perfetti? I know there's still a little bit of the hypothetical, but would you be supportive of a rule change of that manner in terms of how that might affect Cole and some of the other players that had AHL experience this year?
See, I'm obviously a big supporter of junior hockey and making sure your kids develop properly, and so again, the CHL rule has been a rule that has afforded that opportunity to those young kids to develop based on if you're not 18 or 19 and in the National Hockey League you have to go back. I think we're in a real unique situation here. This past season, with Cole especially, and I guess I can't speak for any other teams, but if in fact that does become a rule, whether it's for this year or moving forward, I think you have to be careful how you use it. But a player like Cole, shown tremendous improvement, going to the World Championships and playing with men, and having that opportunity, I think help further his development. And if there's that opportunity next year, I think having him available to the American League is just a great option to have, especially for him. That's not to say that he doesn't come to camp and earn a job, because that opportunity could be there for him as well for an exciting young guy like that. So any option that we have with his development, like the American Hockey League, is a welcome thing.
Just a few more for Kevin. We'll go back to Mike McIntyre from the Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Kevin, I know it's going to be unveiled, I think, at 5 o'clock our time today, but just give us your thoughts on your team schedule for next season, which obviously is going to look a lot different than the one you just completed.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's there's obviously, if the Olympics is still a reality, they're at least you're moving forward in that regard right now, putting some emphasis on that in the schedule. It's a period of time where you have a big break, so going back to when we had the Olympics before, it was an interesting time for everybody not to have, games in your marketplace for an extended period of time. The good thing, I guess, for us is, we'll have Moose Hockey playing during that time, and a great opportunity for, for some people to keep their hockey fix, so to speak, going while the potential Olympics would be going on. It's it compresses things in a certain manner when you have those kind of things, but we just gone through a really compressed schedule, and I think that it does get you back a little bit more to the traditional time where you can have off days and the like. So of course it's not perfect. There's always things that you would have liked to change, and but the NHL does their very best to try to listen to to everybody's problems, so to speak.
Go back to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Kevin, you were talking about your assessment of the draft and the upper tier, and then, you guys, there's a drop off in that kind of secondary tier right behind you. Do you foresee the way that those tiers are setting up, or maybe the way scouting was challenging this year, as this being a kind of year where there's maybe more opportunity in than past years, and maybe moving those picks or making kind of, more active GMing than we would typically see?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure yet. Haven't really had a round of those calls yet for teams looking to to move up. There might be some situations where again, for us, if we don't, if we've lost the players off the board that we covet, we might move back. It just depends on I guess how it all unfolds in front of you.
And final question to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, Kevin, if you were to take a look at either trading or signing an unrestricted free agent to address a need, keeping in mind you said previously that there have been times in the past where you've earmarked people, but they just don't see you or your organization as a viability. So would a trade be more of a likelihood if there was a need that you wanted to address?
I think you're open to everything. Again, right now we're active in both fronts. We're active on whether it's talking about trading players for picks, talking about maybe trading players for players, and then but you don't have the shotgun start yet of free agency yet. So that's the thing that kind of happens, like the timing side of things, you're always, kind of weighing and wondering. So you don't know, like there are, we've addressed some needs, albeit maybe short term, through free agency last year, and maybe, maybe there's that opportunity again this year. So you kind of evaluate everything as it comes at you, and as the different events unfold. And obviously the draft right now, everybody's talking whether you're going to move a pick for something, so because that's that's the way it is. The value of picks right now are at their highest, and because everyone's getting set and ready to pick. So, once these next 2 days go by, then you're focused more on the either player for player or free agency aspect of things.
Thanks very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if it was by design. It probably wasn't, but very appreciative of the great timing for the Winnipeg Jets to roll out the general manager. And, as expected, I mean, I assumed that it would be the first question. They put out the statement. I know Sean Reynolds touched on it. Pretty clear that, Kevin Cheveldayoff's put out that, was not aware of anything until right before the end of Aldrich's employment, and may, in fact, certainly open to talking to investigators, but it has not been the case. So that was something I knew would be addressed the next time Kevin Cheveldayoff spoke to the media. But as we get Michael Remis back in here, otherwise, I don't think we were going to get a whole lot of breaking news, as Chevy certainly is not one to show his cards. But it was interesting hearing both the way that they're approaching the draft this weekend and the potential for some deals. And Remo, this a lot goes back to the question I had with Ken Wiebe talking about Sami Niku, in that, if he's not a player that, has a future here in Winnipeg, they still have him on, a relatively cheap contract. There, I'm sure, would be some interest around the league for Sami Niku, and maybe that is a player that they could turn into some picks, considering they only have 4 going into this weekend.
Yeah, some stuff came out of that for sure. The one thing, we talk about Logan Stanley off the top, how teams were calling about Logan Stanley, and that's one thing when you make the expansion draft list or your protected list. You also think, okay, do other teams want this player, and then could Seattle pick them and then flip them? So that was interesting. A lot of people come and chat every time and ask about Brian Little, and he addressed it at the end of the season. Said Brian Little hasn't been medically cleared to play by a doctor, and reiterated that. So while he's not officially retired, it seems like he'll be on LTIR for the rest of his contract. The Cole Perfetti was asked about that.
Yeah,
I mean, they're definitely they were probably high-fiving us that they could send him to
Listen, I'm sure
AHL.
they've been, I guarantee you, they've been one of the teams that probably has been lobbying the league to do something about this, because and I know, let's face it, think about this Jets organization. Kevin Cheveldayoff, Craig Heisinger, Mark Chipman, they all came to where they are right now through working their way up, both as an organization, as individuals, through the American Hockey League. So, they know. When I was working back in the American Hockey League, we always talked about the fact that, a lot of these young players were not benefiting from the fact that, they had to go back to junior in that 19-year-old year. And it would be nice if there was some sort of arrangement made where teams could have, say, one prospect go to the American League. That hasn't been the case up until now. And even if it's a 1-year exemption for Perfetti and players of his ilk, I'm sure the National Hockey League and member teams, especially the Winnipeg Jets, would be quite happy for it. So I have a feeling that they've been loudly mentioning this for years, to be honest, Reem. And if there was ever a time that change was going to come, a season like this, I think, would be what would bring it on.
Yeah, and they set the rule so if you played 20 games in the AHL last year and you're junior eligible, you're allowed to play in the AHL again. He played, I think it was 32 or so. So I don't think it would be fair to the player to have to go back to junior after spending so much time and succeeding like he did. So to be honest, Huss, I was kind of disappointed they came out with that ruling today. I wanted to see the Jets have to make a tough decision. Would they put him in the NHL? Would they, try him at that second line, or would he have to, do something crazy like go to Europe? Now they don't have to do that. He can just, start at the AHL. Maybe he goes the Kyle Connor route, starts off, gets hot, injury pops up, and he comes into the lineup. But a part of me did want to be like, okay, let's see what are they going to do for this tough decision.
Well, listen, it's great to know that they have to make that. But again, if you are interested in the best interest of the player or the team, do you just have him sit in the press box if he's not ready to go? Do you send him back to junior or have him do that? Just having this option, especially for the Winnipeg Jets that have their team just down the hall here in Winnipeg, certainly best case scenario for the Winnipeg Jets and Cole Perfetti as it pertains to that.
I'm just joking around, but obviously, for the player, you're super pumped that you can go to the AHL, continue that development. and have a shot. And we talked with Tom Toninato about what's it called, about how great it is that the AHL is in the same city as the NHL.
Yeah, great comment by Frosty. In addition to being able to play there, Cole Perfetti, even getting AHL money will be much better than the minimum wage they might not even get in the Ontario Hockey League. So yeah, there's definitely that too. Overall, interesting. I mean, again, we don't expect a lot of breaking. I know some people were saying he got a pass. I mean, I don't know what he wasn't asked about that. He would have been grilled on. I mean,
that's with the UFAs.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, right now the answers aren't really there, and I mean, very rarely will you hear an NHL GM go up, oh yeah, I mean, keep in mind, the free agents aren't even free agents yet. So, I mean, you can't talk about those players. And, when it comes to trading, I mean, I don't think many GMs, but especially a team that keeps their cards as close to the vest of the Jets aren't going to be talking about their trade targets or whatnot. I have a feeling the tougher questions for Cheveldayoff come in a couple weeks if they're not able to do what everyone knows they've set out to do, and that is fortify and improve the blue line in a significant way. And now, of course, there's also the question about that hole that Mason Appleton leaves, whether that's filled internally or potentially through adding some more players. One thing I do know, Reem, is that, with everything that's happened this week with the Kraken, next week with free agency, as well as this weird world that we've lived in for 18 months as it comes to scouting, not to mention preparing players to be drafted, I think there's as much uncertainty and intrigue about this week's draft festivities than we've had in a long, long time. Otherwise, it was just, who's going to go one, who's going to go two. But I'm fascinated at some of the moves that are made in conjunction with the draft, as well as specifically with the Winnipeg Jets, what they do with players like a Sami Niku that might have value, that could get some picks. Do they pick in their spot? Do they move back? And do they try to acquire more draft capital this weekend from the 4 picks that they have going into the first round?
Yeah, and they do like to trade for picks, so maybe that would be something to get some more. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the draft is. It is another virtual draft. Someone was asking in chat where it was, we're staying virtual. We'll have to see how the broadcast is too. We got a bit of a taste of the, conglomerate NHL Network, ESPN, Sportsnet broadcast yesterday with the expansion draft. This will be another one. Haven't seen too many details about it, but NBC, no longer doing it, and NHL Network, ESPN, and Sportsnet working together. So it's something going forward that we'll be, getting accustomed to.
That'll be interesting. Hey, welcome to anyone that may have just jumped in during the Cheveldayoff presser. This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. If you haven't already, if you're with us in the chat, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button. It certainly helps us grow the channel. And especially for you WSTers that maybe were on holidays and came back, we do have a merch store now. We've got some amazing t-shirts, hoodies, and more. Hats coming with our friends at Royal Sports soon. I know we put out the link a few times in the chat, but if you want to, or tell a friend about it, it's all at winnipegsports.com. Click on the store chat, and I've been wearing out my WST hoodie and t-shirt so far. I've got some other great stuff coming soon, but we do thank it. And as well, if you haven't already, subscribe. We just hit 5,000 yesterday. It was a big, big milestone for us. Hit that subscribe button and make sure that you're subscribed. And speaking of the 5K, I know we were planning on doing it today, but we've gone so long with Cheveldayoff with the presser that just sort of fell in our laps at 2:30 p.m. What we will do is make sure you're with us tomorrow. We will have great draft preview with Scott Wheeler of The Athletic. We'll talk some more Jets. We'll get the latest on the National Hockey League heading into the weekend. And Remo, I think the only proper way to finish up the week that we hit 5,000 subscribers is with one of the world famous Winnipeg Sports Talk marble races.
Yeah, we'll have to do it. So come in the chat. We'll get a bunch of names. I did upgrade my computer last night. Added some new RAM in there for all you computer guys. So should be a bit better, better working tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that. I think it's a bit beefed up here today. So yeah, very excited.
Yes, and Mark Sports Video mentioned this. We were going to get it tonight. We talked about fans coming back to the to the Gold Ice. We talked about fans coming back to Assiniboia Downs. Tonight, fans are back at Victory Lane Speedway. And, I'm excited to get out to the Speedway at some point this season, but I'm even more so now that we have a ride. I've probably told you about this before, but Rick Delane Racing is going to be out there, one of the top drivers, rocking around, hopefully getting that checkered flag in the Winnipeg Sports Talk car. You can see it there on the screen if you're watching with us on YouTube. We got a chance to check it out a couple weeks ago. Remis, you sat in the car, revved it a little bit. What a beast that is. So our official good luck for the season to our good friend Rick Delane and that Winnipeg Sports Talk car that you will be able to see with Delane Racing tonight at Victory Lanes Speedway. I still can't get over we're on a car, Reem. This might be the in addition to 5,000 subscribers, having our logo on the Delane Racing vehicle at Victory Lane Speedway, one of the best things that happened to us since we started this on the 8th of March.
This is the coolest thing ever, this car, and here we are with it. I got to go in it. Oh, there I am. I'm in the car there. Had to climb in. It was so cool. It was so loud too. That thing we were in the Royal Sports parking lot. Checking it out. So that's so awesome that Rick would put, we thought it was just going to be like a small decal there. It's the entire, it's the entire hood. It's crazy. So we
awesome.
Will, does he have any stories? I think he had some. Oh, yeah, there it is there. Packed up and ready for the first race tonight. And there's the car, I guess, in his like giant trailer that he hauls it in. So yeah, check out Delane Racing on Twitter. So cool that he put that logo on his car. It's wild.
We're all fired up. We'll get out to the track at some point. I believe they normally go Thursday nights, but tonight's the first night. If you're looking for something to do, God knows I was just looking for some cool bet lines to give you. There's nothing going on tonight outside of some Major League Baseball and probably many very hungover people in Milwaukee as the Bucks celebrate their championship. So, yeah, get out to the track tonight. Cheer on the Winnipeg Sports Talk car and Delane Racing if you're able to do it. Lots of fun. I've been there a few times. It is a great, great night for the entire family. All right, quickly, let's get to the cool bet lines. As I mentioned, we are looking at, and it's Thursday night too, travel day for many. We do not have the Blue Jays on the docket tonight. Probably the game of the night to me is the Giants and Dodgers. That NL West has just been phenomenal this year. Dodgers minus 164 at home, Giants plus 144. You've also got the Padres, who've been awesome this season. The other part of that three-headed monster in the division, their favorites on the road, minus 139, taking on the Marlins. Cubs and Cardinals tonight, Cards minus 128, Cubs plus 113. And the Twins, Twins aren't favored too often. Maybe I'll have to check that pitching matchup because they're minus 154 over the Angels. Angels at plus 136 on the road. While you're at Cool Bet, you can also get ready for CFL season. They got all the props there. We talked about some of them on the Lock Shop this week because, Michael, we are 2 weeks away from the Bomber home opener on August 5th. I know tickets continue to sell at a very brisk pace. Hoping to see that place absolutely packed of fully vaxxed fans. So 14-day countdown to kickoff at IG Field and all of us getting back, cheersing each other and cheering on the 2019 Grey Cup champs for the first time since they raised the trophy in Calgary.
Oh, yes. I'm excited. More details coming out. So, yeah, the home opener for the Bombers. CFL Fantasy, we'll be running our DraftKings pools. I know people were excited about the PGA one on the weekend, so lots to get to. I know we got the, again, Olympics starting up. Who would have thought, Huss? We got this laundry list here of things to talk about on July 22nd, the hockey off season, CFL starting up, Olympics, everything. You got Assiniboia Downs coming back, Gold Eyes. What are you looking at good. There? You got something cool?
I was just looking. I meant to, you mentioned the golf, the DraftKings British Open pool, and we've got to give a shout out to Go Jets Bombers, who took it down. Oh, my buddy Hammerballs. He's always in the mix in the golf. Hammerballs got second, Lomac third, Hobo Skater was fourth, and Chabby's been in a lot of our contests, got into fifth place. The top five got paid. Poor C. Platt, right on the C. Platt's been with us for a long time. He was right on the bubble. But yes, we're 2 weeks away from our first CFL DraftKings contest of the year. We'll tell you more about that. Hey, one more just little tidbit to finish off the show, Reem, on this opener. I did see some things on social media that the anti-vax crowd was planning on doing some sort of a protest before the August 5th Bomber game. Now, I am fully on board with the right to protest. That is part of our part of the Constitution and all that. But I will say this, considering how excited and fired up people are to get to that park, I don't know if it'll be the cops, but if there is a major nuisance of people trying to prevent Bomber fans from getting into that stadium, A, it could get ugly, and B, I think many of those anti-vaxxers, that might be their final protest, if you will. That could be a bad situation. And I know Bomber fans will not be having it.
Well, here, that guy actually got arrested, Patrick. Here's the release from the Winnipeg police. They were alerted to people are posting, and we saw this yesterday with that guy from that fitness place. People love posting about the crimes they're going to do on social media. It just makes it so much easier.
Stupid are these people?
So this guy,
oh my God.
So this guy was trying to organize people to block roads to IG Field, like whatever. So apparently he was bound by a court order that prohibits the promotion and organization of gatherings contrary to any order made under the Public Health Act. So he was arrested and charged for failing to comply with the conditions of his release. Like, how stupid can you be? So if you're gonna plan something that goes against your court order, maybe obviously don't do it but maybe don't do it on social media where everyone can see. Like,
yeah, or maybe mix in a burner account or something. Not that I need to help these people with the simplest things that any rational human would think of beforehand. But yeah, you know what? If I was out and I had conditions of a release order, maybe I wouldn't be doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, hopefully there won't be any issues. But if there are, I have a feeling this won't be a peaceful protest, and I have a feeling there'll be thousands of people in blue and gold that will, let's just say, assist people in clearing the road so we can fill that stadium on IG Field.
And we wanted to get to this before the show, at a time, but we kind of got pushed back because of the Cheveldayoff thing. But the NFL put out today, they are coming down hard. And I said to you, I'm going to need, for my fantasy rankings, list of, vax players and unvax players.
Yes.
And not kidding, because, so where's the thing? We sent it to each other at the same time.
I've got it right here. This is absolutely amazing. So this is from Tom Pellisario. The NFL just informed clubs that if a game cannot be rescheduled during the 18-week season in 2021 due to a COVID outbreak among unvaccinated players, the team with the outbreak will forfeit and be credited with a loss for playoff seedings, per sources. Massive implications. What is even crazier, though, not crazier, but even more, shall we say, extreme, and why I think this is even more to the players, is that if there is a forfeit of the game, here it is, the biggest penalty for all the players. If a game is canceled and cannot be rescheduled within the current 18-week schedule due to a COVID outbreak, neither team's players will receive their weekly paragraph 5 salary. You read that right. Nobody gets paid. So I still can't believe it. We were joking about this earlier, that the NFL, of all things, is sort of leaders in the push for the vaccine, but that is exactly where we are. And Reem, I can't wait to hear the next press conference with Cole Beasley of the Buffalo Bills on how he feels about what we've learned today.
Yeah, I'm pulling up his Twitter right now, and I would have never thought that the NFL, he hasn't tweeted in 2 days, would be a leader in this. But you know what? They want to protect their business, and I think it's pretty clear that in areas where more people are getting vaccinated, you have less hospitalizations. So credit to the NFL for putting together a very strict policy, and we'll see if the players want to do it. And I know a lot of MLB teams, they're struggling. Some teams, I know the Cubs and other teams, Mets, I think, players aren't getting their shot, and they still have some restrictions. So we'll see how it goes for the NFL and how it impacts fantasy and gambling. And I'm not kidding. Give me a ranking sheet for doing drafts.
I want an injury report every week, and I want a vax report of the players, or at least numbers of
for gambling.
Who's there. They're definitely going to need to do that. So anyways, listen, it's no different than a lot of other jobs that you if you're dealing with the public or dealing with a lot of people, your employer might expect you to be that, or you have the freedom not to do it, but you also have the freedom to go work somewhere else. And that's the issue. And as far as the gold eyes go, it will be interesting to see any player movement on the Winnipeg team, for one, because it's only going to be fully vaccinated players and coaches and staff that are coming back. And I don't know, I certainly haven't heard that they've been 100% vaccinated. So there may be a little work for Cash and Rick Forney to do with some lineup tweaks beforehand. And as far as for the visiting teams that are coming, unvaccinated players will not be making the trip. So that will be a challenge for some of the visiting teams if they want to get other players or continue and just leave guys at home. Anyways, the bottom line is, if you're concerned about going to sporting events here in Winnipeg and in Manitoba, if you're going to Valor, if you're going to the Bombers, if you're going to the Gold Eyes, if you're going outdoors at the Assiniboia Downs, you'll simply show your QR code, show your ID, and then you're in. And I think it should make for a great atmosphere at all of these events. Great show today. And, as I said, really thanks to Michael Farkas, some great stuff with Kenny Wiebe. And then it was a privilege to be able to bring you Kevin Cheveldayoff live. So we thank the timing to the folks that whatever decided that 2:30 was a great time, because I know a lot of you hung around to see that, and it was awesome. Folks, if you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We continue to grow. It's great to have you on board. We'll do a few giveaways tomorrow. We'll have a fun marble race with some giveaways from our sponsors tomorrow. So make sure you stick around to the end of the program and join us live on YouTube. As always, we got to thank Little Brown Jug and Not AutoCorp, Breezy Ben. By the way, speaking of Breezy Ben, Ricky Fowler is back. Ricky, the first round leader, shot at 64 at the 3M Open. Man, it'd be nice to see him get back in the winner's circle. Great start for Rick this week. Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Assiniboia Downs, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, and Cool Bet Canada. If you're betting on Cool Bet, use that promo code WST. You'll get a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. Tomorrow on the program, a deep dive into the draft with one of the best in the biz, Scott Wheeler of The Athletic. More on the Jets heading into the weekend, and maybe a little update on Blue Bomber camp as well. That's going to do it. And of course, a full rundown of the Jets schedule, which is going to come out in a couple hours. We'll go through that. Top games, home opener, when we see the Kraken here, all of that tomorrow on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Thanks to everyone that was with us. If you wouldn't mind, hit that like button on your way out before you close down the YouTube. If you're on a mobile, just close the chat and hit it up. And if you're listening on the podcast, thanks so much for making us a part of your day. Anytime you have a chance, give us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. It also helps us grow the channel. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Thanks again to Michael Farkas, Ken Wiebe. And we got to hear from the press conference, Kevin Cheveldayoff. We'll be back tomorrow to get ready for draft day and the first round tomorrow night. And, of course, a big weekend on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great one, folks.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.